Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Point Man Podcast with your host, John Imperial. And I have Phil Pelletier with me today. Phil, what's going on, man?
Oh, same old today, John.
Yeah, what are you drinking over there today?
Today we're looking at a new brew from Tuckerman Brewery, Dawn Patrol IPA. It's another New England style IPA. I really can't get enough of them. And this one came out just as good as all the others from Tuckerman Brewery.
Oh, nice. Is that the, they make the 50 cent, right?
They do, yeah. 50-cent day. Yeah, it's great beer. It's a good session IPA.
Yeah, that's my favorite, that 50 cent IPA on draft.
Yeah, on draft. You can't beat it. Did you ever do the brew tour down there on Tuckerman?
No, is it good?
Yes. Well, yeah.
Yeah, no, I haven't done that at all. Today I'm drinking the good old Jocko Discipline Dak Savage drink. I don't even know. It's pretty good. It's one of those health nut drinks that he's been making. So
yeah, I tried those for a pre-workout just because I don't know where I got into it, but I want something like that beyond water when I'm starting in the gym at least.
Yeah, that's good.
And I gave those a swirl, and it was pretty decent.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. It's black cherry and vanilla, and just get a little bit of caffeine in there to get you going and keep you going throughout the day. So today we are lucky to have the host of Warden's Watch podcast, a retired New Hampshire Fish and Game Lieutenant, Mr. Wayne Saunders, here with us in studio, a.k.a. the spare bedroom, the team room, here at Point Man Podcast. Wayne, what's going on today?
You got to start somewhere, John, you know. I started in a closet, and now I'm in the basement, so I think you're doing pretty good with a spare bedroom.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I hope so. Yeah. I don't have to make sure the water isn't running. You know.
Exactly. Ambient noise.
Yeah,
exactly. That's the first thing we learn in podcasting is noise.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey, as we were just talking about a few minutes ago, just, learning all about it and being your own producer, being your own host, learning all the computer programs that go along with it. It literally took me, I don't know, a week and a half to figure out the artwork, just to get it to upload into iTunes correctly and go from there.
And you're doing better than I did because I needed help. I had to actually hire a producer, because I knew my faults, and technology is one of those faults. So, and I have been drinking through a fire hose ever since. And it seems just when I think I get a handle on it, there's something new.
Oh, yeah.
COVID hits, and now I'm Zooming my podcast.
How's that been going?
It's okay. The best way is to do it like we're doing it here, in person, 6 feet away, with a mic in front of you, having that interaction. And drinking a beer too. That's the first time I've drank a beer on a podcast.
So what do you have?
I've got the Strawberry Blonde.
Right.
So Pipe Dream Brewing, Londonderry, New Hampshire.
How do you like it so far?
I do. But I love Tuckerman's because I love those people down there.
Yeah.
The owners are good friends of Fish and Game. We're going to be doing a golf tournament here August 11th.
Oh, nice.
Brian Abrams Memorial Tournament. And they have come on full blast with us on that. Pretty much taken over the whole tournament, which is awesome.
Was Brian a Fish and Game guy?
He was a Fish and Game guy. Died in a motorcycle accident in 2013.
Okay.
And just a dynamic individual, mountain rescue, just a game warden, a law enforcement officer, friends of the police departments, friends with the Forest Service, just a pretty awesome individual. So he was a huge loss to us.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's great when you see local, establishments like that get involved with law enforcement, and host different.
And my first memories of Brian is we have a field day every 3 years.
Okay.
Is going to Tuckerman's 24 years ago and getting beer for that event. So rolling kegs out into my truck. And they're one of the oldest microbreweries, I think, in New Hampshire because they've been around for 25 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wasn't sure of that.
And, it started most of the ski areas. You can find them on tap in the ski areas, and that was their bread and butter to start. And now to see these awesome brews come out that Phil's drinking a New England IPA, and I get schooled on that about New England IPAs compared to other IPAs around the country, which was good because I'm always want to learn. But I have done the tour at Tuckerman's, great people down there.
Oh, and, good. Well, that's good to hear. And then how long is the golf? Is it golf tournament, you said?
Yep, the golf tournament's August 11th.
How long has that been running for?
Since I think 2014 is when Mark Hensel started it.
Okay.
Mark's now a state police officer.
Okay.
So
did he start with you guys?
He did. He went over. He was worked with us. I don't know how long, but it seemed like forever. And then he went over to state police.
Really, never really hear of that conversion. You always hear the other way around. But
very rare.
Yeah,
very rare.
Huh.
So,
well, that's interesting.
Yeah, and it was an unfortunate loss. He's a great guy. He started our canine program.
Okay.
He went to Florida, did his canine program down there, learned how to be a trainer, and brought that back to New Hampshire. And certainly, we miss him a lot. And that's state police has a great asset there.
Well, that's always good to hear. Especially when you can still talk good about somebody after they leave. The police department that they work for another one. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
So the point of our podcast here is kind of like incorporate or, to bring and strengthen that gap between law enforcement and the general public and military and general public. Obviously, with everything that's going on nowadays, it seems like obviously that division has grown immensely, especially with, all the marches and whatnot. And I think that you're definitely a good asset to have on because you can help strengthen that in what you're doing with your own podcast right now, but you're also you were on one of the last running cable police shows that's still on there. Obviously, there's no more live PD or cops right now, but Northwoodslaw and the Animal Planet still going. I mean, we'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But that must have been quite the journey to do that as well.
No doubt. Another curve that I never saw coming. That it was pretty awesome, to say in your life you made television and, still people see me today in the reruns. And, I walk into some place, they're like, we just saw you the other day. We were watching Northwoodslaw and saw you on there, Lieutenant. And, that's one thing you don't see a whole lot of lieutenants on there. Yeah. Because we're the guys calling the shots. They want the action. They want the guys exactly. On the field, on the ground, like you guys. They want to follow you around with the camera. They don't want to follow our lieutenant around. All he does is talk on the radio all the time. So we'll put him in here and there, but, they want the action. Yeah. Oh, that's good, though. That's good. I remember, I was on the phone the other day with a charity I'm hoping to have from California. And he's like, one of my favorite shows is Northwoodslaw. I'm like, I'm having Wayne on there. You plugged my podcast, right?
Oh, yeah, of course I did. And he actually, his charity donates. So what you do is especially after the Dallas shootings, but it actually started before that. It happened in 2013, I think it was, where they had their son was working for Las Vegas PD. Mm-hmm. And a couple of his friends were killed in line of duty over at a fast food joint. I can't remember the name of it. And so after that happened, they started this charity called E614 Armor, and they donate body armor to police departments, especially the smaller ones, but they'll donate them to any officer who requests them. Nice. And so they get their armor donated from AR 500 Armor, and if you go on there, sign up, and they'll donate armor. And I think they recently just filled a request of 600 police officers that requested armor just after the Dallas shootings. Wow. That's how backed up they are right now because all these guys in the police departments, they can't necessarily always supply the body armor to these guys, and we're left out there buying it on our own. Mm-hmm. But you have good charities like this that are actually out there donating and raising awareness.
People forget small rural departments don't have the assets of big departments. Yeah. So a charity like that is priceless.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's such a budget hit for a small department when you have 2 or 3 guys, or even 6 or 7. Yeah, that's and I'd wonder what Boston PD thinks is a small department. 30. That's probably small. Yeah, exactly. For us thinking a small department, we're talking 2, maybe
3.
1.
Yeah. Exactly.
Pittsburgh PD, 1 full-time officer.
Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, by the way.
Yes, yeah. Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. Yeah. 1 full-time officer. And there's several other communities around the state that have 1 full-time officer.
Yeah, and that's all they have.
Yeah, and think of a budget for that, and then to provide body armor that's pretty awesome that they're doing that.
Yeah, it definitely is. So we have you here to talk about your experiences within law enforcement and in life, especially what you have going on now. And are you from New Hampshire originally?
I am originally from New Hampshire, Laconia, New Hampshire.
Oh, okay.
Grew up was born in Laconia, spent till like 6 years old. I moved to Belmont, which I always tell people, right next door. So I always say I'm from Laconia because people have a tendency to understand where Laconia is more so than Belmont. Yeah,
Laconia is home of the Bike Week for those from across the country who are listening.
Winnipesaukee. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, right on Lake
Winnipesaukee. Pretty popular area.
Yeah, and so what got you interested in being in the outdoors?
Just growing up, that's what we did. We hunted, we fished.
Did Dad hunt?
Yeah, my dad hunts. Yeah. We fished all the time. So, and a lot of subsistence, stuff. We would go out and when the white perch were running, we'd fill a bucket. We'd go home, we'd clean them, and we'd eat them. Yeah. So same way with deer. We weren't antler hunters, so to speak. We were, we're going to shoot it, we're going to eat it. So it didn't matter if it was a big one, small one.
How old were you when you first got your first deer?
Oh, that's a good question because I didn't get my first deer until I was, I got it with a bow, believe it or not.
Really?
And I'm trying to think, how old was I? 1990. So right around 19, probably 20, probably, you know what? I bet I was 21 my first year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's it's interesting you bring that up because growing up, we didn't shoot a lot.
Okay.
So I think I magically thought I pulled the trigger and the deer fell down because I don't think we focused on marksmanship.
Yeah.
And whether it was ammo's expensive or what, but we should have been out in the sand pit shooting a lot more and focusing on, because I shot at a lot of deer. Okay. I didn't hit a lot of deer. Now, with all the training that we get with being police officers, it's aim.
Yeah.
And it becomes instinct after a while, but take your section. And Phil, you've killed some pretty nice bucks, by the way. So
I appreciate that.
But do you think about aiming or do you just aim?
So I had to learn the hard way. I think I was 15 or 16. I shot my first buck. And growing up with my dad, he was all about practicing and aiming. So like when the time came,
I can see that.
Yeah, when the time came, my first deer, just a nice little button buck behind my grandfather's house. And it was like, there's a deer. He's a shootable deer, just like you. I'm not out there for a trophy. A, it's my first deer. And B, like, we're out there just for the meat. And we're going to go and, hopefully harvest this. And once I noticed there was a buck, everything went out the window. And, I placed the shot where I was supposed to, got lucky, a little bit of skill, and, one shot, and he ran, 40 yards and was down. And I had a couple more on a hunting trip. And then I didn't shoot another one for a long time. And
really?
And I think you just kind of lose it if you're not paying attention. And I took a nice shot at 2 huge bucks, in my later teens. And I think it was just getting caught up in the rack. And, I tracked this one deer and stands up from his bed. I did everything perfect. And in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, I did it. And he stands up and it's this huge buck. And I put that round right through his antlers, like no idea. Chased him the rest of the day, never got him. And it was just a refocusing on get back to the basics.
Right.
And
marksmanship.
Marksmanship and just knowing what you're doing and paying attention to what you're doing. Once you figure out that it's a shootable buck, if you're out there for a trophy, then you're going to decide in that second if you're going to shoot him, if you're going to pass on him. But once you decide you're going to shoot, that's it. You need to forget about the rack, and go back to just focus on the deer itself, and make sure you're aiming, true for that animal because you got to respect it. You don't want to wound that, that guy.
Exactly.
And, have a bad hunt. You want to make sure that your hunt's good.
Yeah. Which is funny you bring that up because I went through sniper school for the law enforcement sniper school down at 6 Hour, and I spent quite a few times on the range with Phil's dad. And if I hadn't done that, I would not have passed the school. And it's funny because he says that, but they bring up aiming and shooting, and he comes from a good line of generation of
no doubt
of shooting and whatnot, and with that accuracy. So
I remember Phil's father Pete asking me, "Is it okay if I shoot across the ice?" I'm like, why would you want to shoot across the ice? He's like, well, it'll be as safe on the backside, I just want to shoot because I want to get some long distance shooting in, and that would be a great flat spot to do it. I'm like, that's ingenious. So yeah, you can shoot across the ice.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
I just one of those questions.
I think John has shot across the ice.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
He loves that. And
middle of the winter, he drags me up there, and it's 8 a.m. and we're going up to the dam. Is it Pontook?
Yep.
And
that's where he loves to. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right up there.
Get a good long shot there.
Oh yeah, and he's like, I can teach you how to make a silencer out of the snow and how to carve out the snow so we can shoot through it, and there's not much sound at all. But no, it was definitely being
Sounds like you had a Pete on your podcast too.
Oh yeah, I know. We definitely should. I don't know. Phil's over there getting red already. So
I might skip that one.
You might have a couple moose stories in that too.
Yeah, I can imagine. So your love of the outdoors came from your family growing up.
Definitely my family growing up.
Did you go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just we weren't big sports people.
Okay.
So didn't play baseball. I wrestled in high school.
Did you?
Yeah, but we really focused on hunting, fishing, and the outdoors.
All 4 years of wrestling?
I did all 4 years.
Yeah?
Yes.
How'd you do?
Yeah. Like a 600 record. I didn't win a whole lot, but I didn't lose. So I was right in the middle.
Okay.
So, I was at that 155 weight that was pretty competitive.
Yeah.
And I would slip to the 160, which I get thumped on. So I would lose weight to be 155 again.
Yeah.
So that was probably the struggle through high school. When I start losing, I drop weight again.
All right. Do you make any state championships or anything?
No. But I actually went to a small private school, Lakes Region Christian, and one of my instructors coached at Brewster Academy, so I was able to wrestle with Brewster Academy and go on the road with them. And then I ended up coaching at Tilton Prep for a couple of years, assistant coach. Okay. Coach Chess, he was the head coach there. He's a Marine wrestler.
Oh, really?
Oh, he was like 65 and just so solid. That man, he would make these teenagers just cry at 65. Leg wrestling like I've never seen. Small guy, smaller than me, and just, man, so solid. And, once a Marine, always a Marine. And, man, he was the most solid individual. At 65, he was just, dynamite guy.
I made the mistake last podcast calling Phil a former Marine, so it...
Once a Marine, always a Marine,
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
But, someone's gonna have to write out the definition of that on what is allowed to be said.
And we don't understand that, Phil, what it comes down to.
I mean, and... I'm probably not the person to explain it either. I know you just don't say ex-Marine. Say that. I think if you don't say that, you're basically good.
Yeah.
Just call you Marine then.
There we go.
No doubt.
So you wrestled out of high school. Did you go to college at all?
Yep. State University of New York at Cobleskill.
Okay.
So I have a degree in fisheries and wildlife technology.
Is that upstate, right?
It's mid-state. I call it outside Albany.
Okay.
So it's cow country, which is great. It's a agriculture, excuse me, an agricultural school as well. Mm-hmm. So I went with a lot of people from farmlands, from farms, just good, solid people that I just today.
People.
Yeah, and today one of my good friends, Steve Pat, owns 2 farms in New York.
Oh, that's awesome.
And since I retired, I actually reconnected and went out there hunting last year with on his farms and
stuff.
You
got anything?
So yeah, I got a small doe opening day of shotgun season there. Mm-hmm. But it was an experience opening day in New York with guns. It sounds like a war zone.
Yeah, all private land, right? So everyone's kind of shooting on their own little pocket.
Absolutely.
Enough.
There's state land there, but I would definitely all private land.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what the rules were because I was on his farm. I didn't have to get permission, but It was funny because he told everybody that came to ask him permission that, yep, my buddy's Wayne's out there hunting. So so every hunter I met in the woods, which was way too many, they'd always be like, "Are you Wayne?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Wayne." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Do you want to hunt with us?" I'm like, "No, I'm good."
Not today.
So, but that was just, I really enjoyed having those agricultural people around me.
Yeah.
They were just great people and still are, that they still do an ag engineering, ag business. As a matter of fact, Steve's son is slated to go to SUNY Cobleskill
awesome.
For ag business. So it's good to hang out with farmers.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to hear. What got you interested in policing? Is it something is it a family heritage for you at all?
No, nobody's in policing in my family except apparently I had a great uncle who was a fire marshal or something. At age 5, I went and pinned a badge on for those school pictures that, your parents dress you all up.
Do you still have that picture so you can go on your podcast, Instagram?
I still have that picture. So I'll get it for you so you can post it. But so at I think it was 5 or 6 years old, I pinned that badge on me, and that's my school picture was with the badge.
Oh, that's
nice. As you can imagine, my mother was really thrilled as she opened up the package that they send home with all the pictures for the kids and sees I have a badge on. So so that was probably the beginning to have that desire. But getting into being in the outdoors, I have a mentor, Sergeant Brian, and I'll call him Sergeant Brian. He retired as a lieutenant, but he was a long time sergeant. So, and I used to ride with him and just learn everything about fishing game from him. So if I really wanted to be a game warden, I knew the ins, the outs, the ups, the downs. So I used to ride along. I started at 15 years old riding with him and I did a lot of ride-alongs. And it was fun. Yeah, so Sergeant Brian was my mentor. And I think that's what's cool about podcasting is I don't know if people have that connection anymore to mentors and such like that, because I do get a lot of social media inquiries, messages and stuff, just saying that, the podcast is inspiring. Now I know what I want to do with my life and things like that. And that's exactly why I started Warden's Watch podcast.
That's awesome.
And, just to do the mentoring, the types of stuff that I got, so people can hear the experiences of the game wardens, the job, what it entails before they get into it. Because you guys know, when you try to do a ride along nowadays, it was never my favorite thing to do. It's not the guy's favorite thing to do. And how else do you get that connection? And how else do you know really what it's about?
It's funny you say that because I was that kid in high school, and I was doing as many ride-alongs as I could with the Londonderry Police Department when I was growing up. And of course, I mean, I have one, I think it's like a second or third cousin that was a Saugus Mass Cop. It was my mom's cousin. And that was it in my family. So the exposure I had to police when I was growing up was my lacrosse coach was the chief of police, and then I was just doing ride-alongs.
Yeah.
So what do you see as a ride-along? All you see is the fun stuff, right? And so
riding along is just fun anyways.
Yeah.
You think back when you were a kid, that's like the best thing in the world is doing the ride along.
Exactly.
The radios, everything's new, exciting. And then you think 23 years later, and what throws your soul is, none of that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
well, I still like doing them because I like trying to, I didn't see like the stuff that was behind the scenes of being a cop. I just saw the calls, the arrest, whatever it was. And
you didn't see the paperwork.
No, exactly. So I'm like, listen, pal, before you want to get into this, I'm like, I just let you know that there's probably about 10 hours worth of paperwork here as well that I still have to do for whatever it is. But
so you don't mind doing ride-alongs?
I don't mind it.
Yeah.
I like.
Do you like it?
I like getting to be with the kids and just to, because I was them at one point in time, so I just find it's for me just interesting. Now I'm on the flip side of it now 10, 12 years later that I'm actually giving the ride along. So I think it's just more of like nostalgic for me. It kind of like, hey, I was sitting there, not that long ago.
You want to pass on what you were given in those ride alongs.
Yeah.
You want to pass it on. I think that's pretty awesome to do that.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
I try to encourage ride-alongs, but I know Glenn Lucas left a ride-along on the side of the road because he had an incident that was going on that was pretty serious. So he just said, and it was an older person, so it wasn't like, they were like 15 or something. He was in his 20s, and he's like, we'll come back and get you later.
Yeah.
If you can find another way home,
I've told him before. I think Phil's probably told him when he was doing them, but it's like,
it happens.
I might have to kick you out, bud, and I'm sorry if I do, but
it happens.
Yeah.
But on the normal, and you never want to use that word routine, but on a normal patrol, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But every now and then, you got to drop off at the corner.
I remember doing a ride along with Glenn and went through the same speech of, hey, goes through, even the New Hampshire RSAs and everything. But he's like, something serious happens, you're getting out. And it's kind of like that. Well, I kind of want to go see what's fun and interesting, Of course, it sounds fun and interesting when you have no idea, but it's interesting. And
now you understand.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You get it. Which, it sucks when it happens. I mean, geez, you can ride along the lieutenant. Usually nothing happens then. And people specifically ask me to do ride-alongs as a lieutenant. I'm like, you just don't even understand what I do now. Yeah. So every now and then I'd be able to take that Saturday and throw somebody in the cruiser and ride them along. And I remember a friend of mine, Kraz, he was a former police chief, just law enforcement, retired. Just a big man. He's like, I want to do a ride along with you, Wayne. So I'm like, yeah, we'll throw you in the cruiser on a weekend. We'll drive along. And he just kept the remoteness that we work in. He's like, you're nuts. You're nuts. You're nuts to do this. He's from Massachusetts. He's like, where's your backup? I'm like, if they can find me, which would be another game warden, probably. Yeah, it's probably an hour and a half. He's like, this is crazy. But that's the reality.
Especially up here because there's so many unincorporated areas that don't have police coverage whatsoever. And if they do, it's the state police. And they could be either in the southern part of their troop or up by the Canadian border.
Yeah. And then you got to find them when I'm on, I'm thinking Success Pond Road. You go out a dog leg out of that. I'm up on Lakeside in Cambridge. Yeah. And the troopers got to find me.
I mean, geez.
Some of you guys that, hunt up there and understand that, you'll probably get there a lot quicker than some kid that's just newly assigned to Troop F.
Yeah.
So, and that's that, certainly as a lieutenant, I always encourage my guys to work together.
Yeah.
I think they always drove each other to get better cases and work better cases, and it was safer, especially when you're working remotely. So I'm like, jump in together. Always encouraged that, the guys that I came on with used to bust my chops about that. You guys always work together. And I'm like, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And I saw the benefits of it as far as investigations go and safety. When you're in success, when there's nobody else there's another officer right there.
It's only you typically, and then it could be 3 or 4 hunters, and everybody's armed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, did you like working by yourself at all when you did? Because I can enjoy it. It makes me a better police officer, or better, almost like just a better person in general, because you're out there learning how to talk to people, learning to de-escalate situations just with your words and whatnot. I mean, I get that it's scary. I
preferred working with others.
Yeah.
Colonel Kevin Jordan and I were patrol partners for a long time, and we got so good at working with each other, especially investigations and interviews. Yeah. I would take a breath, and he would start.
Yeah.
And while he's doing that, I'm formulating all the other questions. And when he got done, I was ready to jump back in. You know what that does to a suspect? It doesn't give them time to think.
Yeah, exactly.
The confessions, the information that we were able to obtain by working so close together was just unbelievable. And we almost got to the point where we knew what each other were thinking. And with a partner, you do that, know. I was the bad guy. He would talk to them, and I would, peek inside the door and see the beer on the floor with the hunter, and have a pour party. Yeah. Generally pour that out. You can't have an open container in a vehicle.
Yeah.
And that builds relationships by giving warnings on those little things.
Exactly. You can read out each other. You can read out what you're thinking, how you're looking and standing looking at the person. So
absolutely. And I enjoyed working with somebody.
Yeah.
So and it was just a lot more fun, and it drove you. I mean, I remember when it was time to go home, and the colonel would be like, "Yeah, we got to go check here, we got to go there," and I'm like, "We've got 14 hours in today. Do we really have to do this?" Yeah, we haven't wrote a ticket today, so we got to go find somebody out there doing something wrong. And in fish and game work, that is very true.
Yeah,
and it's just the sneak and peek, and that's why I named it Warden's Watch as my podcast, because we're watching all the time. I love it when people say, "Yeah, I've never been checked by a game warden." I said, "Maybe you've never been checked, but I guarantee you've been watched."
Yep,
because that's what we do. We wear those binoculars and we watch people. The guy fly fishing out there, does he probably have a license? Probably. Have I found a fly fisherman without a license before? Yes.
Without a doubt.
So, and it's just timing. Sometimes I'll sit there and watch them, see if they're keeping their fish, or sometimes, I'll check them. Yeah. But watching produces so much more by sitting there and watching the quality cases. It's not the no license, it's the too many fish.
Taking that tactical pause before you actually go out, let's watch what's happening right now. Let's observe it just for a few more minutes.
So you just put it into, right terms, tactical pause.
Yeah. So,
and a point man would do that.
Yeah, right now.
Should know when.
Yeah, it's the tactical pause.
Yeah, no. I mean, typically sometimes I'm being held back because I'm running. Because Phil's been there probably holding me back as I'm going through the door. So,
well, it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of adrenaline throwing when you're doing point man stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't think the general public understands is the adrenaline that starts flowing through your bloodstream when you have a critical incident, when you have to deal with somebody that you got to deal with. It's the adrenaline and the effects of adrenaline and how that affects you, and then de-escalating yourself because you get hyped up, you get, and then you're in the incident, and then you got to come out of that incident right away and de-escalate yourself when that adrenaline throwing through your brains. And it's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I watch these car chases on TV, and then you've seen them when they get out and they are pretty rough with the arrest. That's adrenaline. I've been there. I've been there on a snowmobile. I've been there in a cruiser. You're all jacked up, and that's your normal reaction.
Yep, exactly.
But we got to take a step back.
That's where your partner comes in critical too, especially someone who you work with all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can check each other like that, and you can play off of him if he's able to keep just a slightly calmer head, because maybe he's the backup officer in that one. Then he's going to be able to just come in there a little bit more calm, and you're like, all right, it's time to calm down, and nothing even has to be said, and it just kind of gets into a better flow right there.
Yeah. And that's what I think is really good about your podcast is the general public has to put their feet in your shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Understand what the police officer, the fish and game officer is dealing with. Watch those incidents. I'm watching these officers get rocks thrown at them right now, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? And that's okay. Okay, you stand there in my shoes and let me throw rocks at you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like and I call it the general public. It's like the public. They don't expect that the officer has a bad day at all. They can't give him any leeway.
We're not allowed to have bad days.
No, never. No. And, I'm not saying what happened in Minneapolis was a good thing, because obviously it wasn't. And they can't even grasp that something might have happened in that officer's life. You never know. He could have just been in the middle of an argument with his wife. I don't know if he was. But, he could have just been at a death scene. Either homicide, natural, suicide, whatever it could have been. He could have just been at something stressful and that happened in his career or even his personal life while on duty. And it's just getting the general public to realize that. And
what's sick about that, there wasn't anything that should have happened.
Exactly.
Dissecting that from point A to point B. Yeah. And it took them a long time to release the police officer's cam. And that's normal. Don't get me wrong. It seemed like a long time to me because I wanted to see what was on that video,
right, and
to read those transcripts because I figured something happened because he seemed very compliant, and then he ends up on the ground with a guy's knee on his neck. Something happened in between there.
Yeah, what was it? Yeah,
he didn't want to get in the cruiser. He was claustrophobic, so he probably went down on the ground. But once you got compliance, that's done.
Put it back in the cruiser and get the hell out of there.
Yeah, and that's what I think. Yeah, whether
we've all been there. It's the officers are probably worried about the people who are video recording, and I get that and understand that. So
I don't think he was, because why would you leave your knee on his neck if you?
No, exactly. Get him back to the cruiser and get everybody out. And the situation's done. It's over, and we can move on and get this guy help if he needs it.
And I think we just got to remember that golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated.
Exactly.
Put yourself in their shoes, what they're going through, and then treat those people like you need to be treated. That golden rule, it's not called the golden rule for nothing.
Right.
And I think as police officers, if we always do that, even on our worst day, treat those people like you would want to be treated,
right,
with respect, with, tell me this, you guys, when you start saying sir to somebody all the time, he could be, the bum on the street. You call him sir. There's a certain rapport you have, even if he starts calling you something. It seems to work better because he is a sir,
yep,
and you treat them with respect, and they start treating you back with respect. And I've seen that turned around totally.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
And it even works, I think, reverse too. When they have that respect for you, I think it automatically triggers that higher level for yourself to just, all right, this guy's respectful. He probably is a decent person at heart. Maybe, you found him because he made a mistake that day or whatever. And I think you're going to be automatically cued to, I'm sure they try and be polite all the time, but I think it helps everyone just queue up to that higher level.
And I think that's what bothers me the worst about George Floyd is that he was calling him sir. He was being respectful, especially in the beginning. And I was just like, I don't know, when people serve me, that is some respect right there. So that just brings them to another level, no matter what.
That's a hard video to watch.
It's a very hard video to watch. And remember, that's a hard video to watch for police officers, for law enforcement to watch. We hate that.
Yeah.
We hate that. We hate that. We hate that.
Exactly.
Oh,
you hit it right on the head there, Wayne.
Yeah. But I'm glad I don't have to talk about that on Warden's Watch.
Yeah. But so what year was it when you decided to, or when you graduated college?
Yeah, 1990. I know that seems like a long time ago.
Oh, boy.
Were you even born then, Phil?
Yep.
Okay. Thank goodness.
Barely,
but I was 33 that year.
Wow. Yeah.
So 1990 rolls around, and did you always know it was going to be New Hampshire Fish and Game, or?
No, I was testing all over the country to be a game warden.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I started off as assistant forest ranger for New York DEC.
Okay.
So I was a backcountry ranger. Basically, I hiked and told people the rules, so I had to stay out overnight. It was a pretty good job.
Bad job at all.
No, I was in great shape because that's all I did was hike.
Yeah.
So 2 days off. I lived in Woodland Valley Campground, a little house there, right in the Catskills of New York.
Okay.
So it was a pretty cool place to live and to start, I guess, my law enforcement career.
Were you out there actually enforcing laws when you do
more of an informational thing?
Okay.
I mean, I always had to call a ranger in to actually do the work. So if a ticket needed to be written, now and then I would call a ranger in. But generally, it's just telling the rules. You have to camp 100 feet off the trail.
Was it all state land?
All state land.
All state land.
Yep. They have the Catskill Forest, Slide Mountain's the tallest point in southern New York, and that was part of my route.
Okay.
So I had a big loop that we would do over the weekend. We'd camp on Slide Mountain because nobody could camp at that elevation. So we camped up there to make sure no one else was camping up there. And then a Giant Ledge would camp out, and that was a bunch of campsites. And we just kind of told people the rules and regulations of the Catskill.
It was just a summer job?
It was just a summer job.
Wow.
Yep.
Seems like a pretty neat one, though.
It was very cool. I was a National Park Ranger shortly thereafter that, which is another really cool job because I got to work in some of the most awesome places in the United States. And, I almost went full-time as a park ranger, and I don't think I would have regretted that either. I have friends that have done that and started off in West Virginia as a whitewater ranger. They hired me to be a marijuana ranger.
Go to look for grows?
To go look for grows.
Really?
That was the money came from. But the one thing they figured out really quickly is you don't put a Yankee in West Virginia and send him out in the woods on his own.
Yeah.
So, and I'm glad they figured that out right away because they switched me out with a local guy that was West Virginia through and through, and he found some grows and was very, very good at it. And they stuck me in his place on a whitewater raft. So I became a whitewater ranger, and I was very happy for that.
As a park ranger, a sworn armed job?
Sworn armed job. I went to North Carolina. Sylvan, North Carolina is where I got my 10 weeks. It was just like a law enforcement, pretty much a law enforcement academy that I went to.
Okay.
Down there for park rangers, seasonal park rangers.
Okay, gotcha.
So if you go full-time, then you would go down to FLETC down in Georgia and go through their process in Georgia. But for a seasonal job, there's several colleges. That was Southwest Community College where I went to. There's several across the country. Santa Rosa, California still does it and certifies seasonal park rangers. The one in Sylvan, North Carolina, works with Great Smoky Mountains a lot and uses their resources to help teaching. And the Great Smokies are right there, and it's a great resource from them. As long as in North Carolina, the law enforcement down there is just incredible. When I was down there, it was eye-opening. They had some narcs there. I'll never forget. They roll in with their Corvettes and their Camaros and everything, and they pop the trunks, and they got heavily machine guns. Dave Hall was our instructor. Dave had been shot twice, hit by a car, and he looked like Grizzly Adams to me.
Holy smokes!
And It was funny, and he taught farms, and that's what he said. I thought it was farms, but farms. And the instructor that came in after him, he's like, "Hey, if you guys get an opportunity to have a few beers with him and get him talking, it's well worth it." So that was on my list to get him talking one time. So actually we get to hang out and have some beers together, and he started telling some war stories, and it was an eye-opener. Very brave guy, and very, yeah.
Is there any thought or idea to get him on the podcast or reach out to him somehow?
I'm not sure if he's still alive, John, but I could, that wouldn't be bad.
Yeah.
So, but with Warden's Watch, I really try to do tendency to game wardens or the periphery. Next, hopefully, I got to go through the one I just did with Jack Bailey's a senator, former game warden out of Maryland. Hopefully, the quality is good because we had some blips and stuff via the internet. So Jack is a state senator for Maryland, but he's a former game warden. And he tells some stories. I just have a historical one on for now with game wardens with Maryland, with their historians. So it's going to kind of build off of that. So, and then I got to make a decision whether to put the next game warden on from Maryland. And the only reason, I have a lot of kids that listen, and he talks about a suicide that's kind of interesting. But I'm hesitant because I know I have a lot of kids listening, and I don't know if I want them to listen to a suicide.
Yeah.
But, for the normal listener like you and me, you would find it extremely interesting and extremely odd. But I'm not sure. I got to make that. I got to listen to it again and make that decision. And that's a hard decision as a podcaster, what to put on for content and what not.
It really is.
The nice thing is we can cut and paste because it's not live.
Mm-hmm.
But, and to put that content out, know who your audience is, and then key into that.
Mm-hmm. So
hopefully you're going to get a lot of civilians listening to that to try to understand where police officers are coming and former military. And, I want to go back to that because, I was talking to my dad about this because, he was in that Vietnam era. Mm. And when they came back from Vietnam, nobody liked the armed forces.
Nobody at all.
Nobody.
Spit on at the airports.
Right. Exactly. So, and now we have this thing going on with police. But when you say military, most people love the military now, don't they?
Yeah, it still perks up right now.
Yeah. Still people are saluting you in airports and appreciate what you did. So I'm hoping the same, I'm a big believer in history repeats itself. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a process. It took the military how many years from Vietnam to nowadays to that? The police officers, I'm hoping, are going through that same process to where the general public is really going to love and respect us because we are passionate about what we do.
Right.
And it's really important, and it's important to them as well.
For me, it peaked. I mean, we never want to see another 9/11 again, God forbid, but I would love to see another 9/12. And, for the week or two after that, where everyone's flying the American flag, everyone is, being great to everybody, are all letting each other go in traffic, and everyone's just treating each other with that respect. And it was just amazing to see.
Crime was was zero in New York City for a couple of days.
I mean, I was in 8th grade when that happened. I was in 8th grade Spanish class when we watched the towers come down. But just to see the unity that happened within America was right. Phenomenal, But so when did you want to come back to New Hampshire to be a fishing game officer up here?
I was in the final processes with Virginia, Maine, and New Hampshire.
Really? Did you have any family out in that part of the country to?
No.
Nothing. So you're just going to be out there alone,
just going to be a game warden.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. They asked me what I preferred, and the Shenandoah Mountains were kind of they had some openings there, and I'm like, the mountains are my gig, so I like the mountains.
Okay.
But I love the seacoast too.
Yeah.
It's just I'm torn, and New Hampshire's a good place because we can still get to our seacoast.
Exactly.
Like if you live in Kansas.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. New Hampshire's that great place. You have the port cities. You have another country to the north, and you have the mountains. You have everything right here.
I totally agree. And sometimes I got to remember on my podcast is I'm so proud of my agency. I'm so proud of my state that I talk so highly of it. And there's a lot of other great places, but you're right. We have seacoast. It is not much of a seacoast. It's 13 miles of seacoast, which it's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we have the mountains. I mean, you come up here and the White Mountains just jump. They are, the tallest thing on the on the eastern seaboard. Everybody loves them, and they're just as tricky. They're just as treacherous as Western mountains, just shorter.
Yep,
but when trees don't grow on mountains, whether you're on the West Coast or you're on the East Coast, there's a reason.
Yeah, no doubt.
And that's what people got to think of. And I'll tell you, that's probably drove me into retirement is the amount of search and rescues that we do.
I can only imagine.
It's just the phone doesn't stop ringing from Friday to Monday.
Yep. So you applied to New Hampshire Fishing Game, and what year did you get hired by them?
1995.
95. Yeah. What academy class were you?
The 107.
Ooh, 107. I was 152. What were you?
163.
Hey, boy.
Wow.
Back when it was hard for you, Wayne, huh?
Yeah.
The last hard class.
The last hard class. Don't you always hear that?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, we used to box. I remember that was the big thing.
Did you?
Yeah, no, not us. Okay. But I remember all the older academies, Doug Berlinski, my boss, they boxed, and we used to box. That was when the academy was tough.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And so I tried never to fall into that, to tell you, you had a sissy academy because we rode, all we did was run up hills for 10 miles and things like that. But it's just funny.
So did you? How was it for you coming right out of college, going to the academy?
Well, I did a lot of actually. I worked from like 1990 until 95, doing the national park thing. So I didn't come right into college, the academy. So I had a lot of life experience, so to speak.
Well, it must have been difficult, even at then, having the life experience. And
it wasn't difficult. It was great. I mean, when you live on bread and water, moving across the country all the time, every 6 months, and then you get a full-time job and you get your first check, you think you're rich. It just blows my mind. So the academy. Yeah, it was just something you had to do.
How long was it for you?
It was 10 weeks, actually. They had the Enhanced Academy, which was actually, I think, 12. And me and one other guy didn't go through the whole academy. They took me out because it was hunting season and they needed me. So that was an option. But I remember at the academy graduation, they always had the Enhanced Academy, except for 2 of us. So it was kind of funny.
I think I remember hearing something about that because it was the 10 weeks and you had the option for those last 2. And those last 2 were the Incident Command System, weren't they? Boy, I think we were before Incident Command, so I don't know. Yeah.
But it was the Enhanced. So.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing something about that.
Yeah.
So 107.
The 107.
All right. And just you for fishing game in there?
It was just me for fishing game. The other 2 guys I came on, Todd Shefcheck worked for Milford PD, and Sam Sprague worked for Claremont PD at the time. So I was the only guy that didn't go through the New Hampshire Police Academy.
Well, because I know New Hampshire is one of those states where everybody goes to the same academy.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking even in
it's
Mass,
a great thing.
Right to the south, exactly.
It's a great thing.
In Mass, they have, I don't know, 5, 10 different academies everybody can go to if they want.
Right.
State police have their own. New Hampshire, if you're a college cop, if you're a state police officer, or if you're a city or town cop, everybody goes to the same academy. And I think that just builds the camaraderie and helps with the networking. Even when you're trying to solve cases, when you catch them down while you're working, it just helps in general with your job and your career. So
it gives you balance, I think, too, to understand, what a sheriff does, to understand what a game warden does, to understand what a local police officer does. And then I think that even the North Country, because we have to work together because we have less numbers, when those Manchester guys go back to Manchester PD, that's pretty much all they see is Manchester Police and State Police.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a good opportunity to get in there, to mingle, and make contacts, lifelong friends. I'm still, friendly with some of my academy friends or academy cadets.
Did they have any classes specific to fishing game? And the reason why I asked that is I went to the academy with one of the guys you had on your podcast, Eric Flouette.
Yep.
And for those who don't know Eric, he's about 6 foot...
6'4".
Is he? No.
I think he's 6'4".
Okay. He might be right around
maybe 6'3.5" or something. I think he's right in there. Well, he'll probably correct me. Him and Glenn Lucas are always saying who's taller. And I think he's got an inch or 2 on Glenn, and always make sure he knows that.
He's about, let's say, 6'4" and 180 pounds, and it was funny watching him getting. Not that he ever got yelled at much, but when he did get yelled at, it was fun watching him. But
did they make him do a mating moose call?
No,
that's what I had to do through the whole academy.
What was that? You don't have to make it if you don't want to.
Yeah. Rod Forey was a cadre at the time and taught defensive tactics and things like that. And just to this, we're friendly. Don't get me wrong, but he one day he was teaching defensive tactics. He's like, Saunders, quack like a duck. Oh, and I'm like, as he's walking away, I haven't quacked. He says, no. Make a mating moose call. So I just made some kind of noise, and that was what I had to do the rest of the academy, was mating moose calls for Rod Forey.
Just when you guys were marching, or?
Anytime he said, Saunders, mating moose call. Which you can imagine was often.
Oh, yeah, I can only imagine.
Yep. As a matter of fact, when our graduation happened, all... the cadets that were graduating, they all made mating moose calls as I was going down to collect my diploma, and my mother thought they were booing me. And they said, no, it's a mating moose call. No. I said, I don't really know if it is or not, but that's the kind of the sound I was trying to make.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, thanks, Rod. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great, though. It's that fun that you have to have, especially in that stressful environment, just to pass the time and whatnot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
No doubt.
So where'd you get assigned right after that?
Colebrook.
Okay. Yep. So you did your FTO and then went to Colebrook, or?
Yep, did it. We do a year FTO with Fish and Game.
Really?
They move us all around the state because a game warden's job on the coast is a whole lot different than northern part in Coos County.
Okay.
So they move you around for the whole year, and you're just constantly with a different FTO doing DORs. That's daily observation reports. Getting evaluated for that whole year before they place you.
Really? And it seems like a long process, though.
It is. And it is, especially for the guys that had been through the academy before.
Yeah.
I got 10 weeks off in that process, so it was kind of a break from the FTO. When I came back out, I remember those guys saying, "Oh, you're lucky you went to the academy," because this gets old after a while, doing the FTO, especially for guys that were seasoned police officers. 4 years with Claremont, I think, or Sam he might have even been a sergeant then. But yeah, guys that had some time on and going through that training period.
So it's a long year than your probationary year? For me, it was, I think when I went through in 2010, it was 14 weeks. Now it's 16. And I had a 12-week FTO period after that. So of that 6 months was either spent in the academy and then on FTO, and then another 6 months after that was my probationary year, but I was on by myself. I mean, I was obviously there were guys working with me, but I was in the cruiser by myself. And at the end of the 1 year, I mean, you're technically off your probation, then you're covered by the union, all that sort of stuff. So is that how it was, or was it?
Pretty much, except it's a year training. They may put you in a month early into an open patrol. I got an open patrol a month early.
So a year of riding with somebody?
A year of, wow. And they're not just one person, but everybody, the 6 districts in New Hampshire, fishing game districts, and you would move to a district, you'd get a different FTO.
Wow.
So I spent a lot of time on the seacoast with Tim McClare, and then a lot of time in Coos County with Doug Gerlinski. And it's just where they needed people. And I was a lousy report writer, so they stuck me with Doug for report writing.
Okay.
Because Doug is very good at it. So,
okay. How was working the seacoast?
I liked it.
I can imagine. I would too.
I really liked Hampton Beach. I told Tim I'd take his patrol in a heartbeat because I was, 25 years old. And, certainly Hampton Beach was attractive to a 25-year-old guy. The beach, the action. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of business, fishing game business on the coast. Yeah. The 13 miles just isn't crazy of the striped bass. I didn't realize how many fish come into New Hampshire because we take a lot of commercial fisheries into our ports. And there's co-ops, fish co-ops there that they actually sell the fish to and stuff. And we have a thriving commercial business in New Hampshire, and it was a lot of work. And then you add the inland stuff. So you get your calls for wildlife, and more population you have, the more calls you have.
Right.
So those guys are really busy with a lot of fish and game work down there. And then hunting season, lobstermen don't stop lobstering during hunting season. But then you add hunting season onto that. Those guys are really busy people. And we actually have patrols to go down there to help them out throughout the summer. We have a government contract called JEA for over 3 miles. So state waters 3 miles, and then after that it's federal. Okay. But we're all sworn as federal officers as well, so we can enforce the federal regulations outside the 3 miles. And that's one thing about a fish and game officer. We're sworn U.S. Fish and Wildlife deputies, and with NOAA as enforcement agents for NOAA. So, and we get training for them to do federal enforcement as well because they don't have enough people.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And we can also go to like boat school. FLETC has a boat school in Georgia that a lot of the guys and a lot of the Seacoast guys have to go to. But then they filter people in. So you get extra training. I kind of wish I went to boat school. I kind of missed out on that.
It seems like it would be pretty cool.
Everybody that comes back just loves it. So, and I was an operator. I was on Lake Superior as a park ranger, so I got a lot of boat school up there and operated a 25 enclosed whaler in some pretty gnarly conditions. So I really like operating boats. And when I go down the seacoast, especially as a lieutenant, I get to tell people what to do. I'm like, I'm driving the boat today.
Yeah.
And they have very nice boats down there. So,
you must have worked a lot with the Coast Guard then down there, probably.
Yes, they work extremely close with the Coast Guard. The boat's at the Coast Guard station. Okay. So as they get on the boat, they're right there, and they work very closely.
Are they doing search and rescue as well, or is it just...
Yeah, we can do search and rescue within those 3 mile limits, and certainly the Coast Guard is better equipped to do that. But we supplement along with Marine Patrol in New Hampshire.
Okay,
which is something unique to New Hampshire, having a different Marine Patrol nationwide. A lot of the fish and game agencies are the Marine Patrol, so that's definitely a different thing for New Hampshire.
Marine Patrol just roll into the state police? Is that
they did? They are a division of state police now.
Okay, okay. So you did that and then came back to the good old northern New Hampshire.
Came back to northern New Hampshire. Colebrook was my first patrol. Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know, New Hampshire it's almost like 2 different states from down south to up here. And it's separated by the White Mountains. And there used to be what they call the old man of the mountain that was in Franconia Notch. And it kind of gave northern New Hampshire its own identity when it came to the rest of, the state itself. And it was just almost 2 different lifestyles. You have, from southern New Hampshire, Boston's not that far. It's about 30, 45 minutes, depending on where in southern New Hampshire you are. But as soon as you get north of like the Lakes region, it's just a different lifestyle up here. It's completely different. It's not the hustle and bustle of the more populated areas down south, and it's a different laid back lifestyle.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you got assigned to Colebrook, and you were just out there every day in the woods looking for different crimes.
Pretty much. Do you guys remember like your first few weeks? It gets pretty dang exciting, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I didn't really have a boss. They encouraged you to work as much as you could. So
okay,
14 hours a day was nothing. That was normal day,
right?
Because I loved doing it.
What year was that when you got assigned up here?
96.
96.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I hired in 95, assigned in 96.
Okay. So and then how'd that first year go for you?
It was great. It was just, exciting. Every day's exciting, and you're learning in patrol. They say it takes a game warden about 5 years to learn his patrol.
Did you get to know a lot of the guys that were not necessarily fishing game, but other agencies within the area?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's like you said. We're so close knit. You go to that academy, and you're with everybody, and then you come to the North Country, and your backup's the local PD, the state police. Yeah, certainly. I've got to know all the guys very quickly. It was great. It was great because, jump in with state police would jump in with you. The local PD, work with them on snowmobile issues within the town. So it was always, it was a lot of camaraderie among locals, state, and feds, because we had Border Patrol right up there. So I always had interactions with Border Patrol and Customs, as well as the Forest Rangers too. So
I forgot about the firefighters.
Yeah, when I first started, we'd have coffee in the morning at 7:00 at the local diner. The chief of police would be there, and there was a whole host of people from Border Patrol, state police, just grabbing a coffee around 7, and would sit there and drink a couple cups of coffee and then go to work. Yeah. And that's kind of it. You'd learn what's going on around. So it was kind of our intel meeting before our intel meeting.
Right, exactly. Over coffee right at their local diner. And
Yeah, just say, hey, what's going on, this and that and the other thing. And
hey, you hear this guy? You ever see him or this car around? And so I can imagine you had a lot of, knowledge about different people in the area that...
that first year, you're just sucking it all up.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's literally...
Or like, hey, I ran into this guy the other day. He seems kind of shady, and then you'd hear the story about that guy. Because in these small communities, everybody knows everybody.
Exactly.
So... And the nice thing about that is, we say you hear that word sir, but if you hear your first name and you have an interaction when you're calling them their first name, that helps too. And that means, you have a relationship with him and you're calling them by their first name when you're going to have to arrest them. So
for me, it's been difficult over the years because obviously everybody knows who you are, but you don't know who everybody is. And I'm pretty good at recognizing. I know I can remember names and faces, but I can't really put two and two together sometimes.
Yeah, but when you start dealing with a guy time and time again, you know his first name.
Yeah. But then you're off duty and it's like, hey, Wayne, what's going on? You're like, I know you from somewhere, and what is it? I remember the first interaction I ever had with that was a waitress at the Olive Garden. She's like, I know you. I'm like, I just arrested you, didn't I, the other day? Yes, I did. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? And obviously, she was fine, but I mean, it was just one of those things. So,
been there, done that, understand that.
So, if you don't mind, Wayne, can I draw your attention to August of '97?
Yeah.
So, do you want to tell me a little bit about that time, or?
Yep. Hired in '95, assigned in '96, and shot in '97. So August 19th, 1997. And I was thinking that when we were talking about the coffee is. Those guys I used to have coffee with. So those are the guys that got killed in the line of duty that day. And, being shot in the line of duty, it's, certainly has a huge impact on you. But losing friends, and I think it's the same way with the military, is losing friends is the biggest impact.
Yeah.
And you think about their families and you think about everything else. And that's the part that really hits home. It's not so much about you, it's about what else went on. And I'm sure if it's an individual shooting or an incident, I'm sure it's more focused on you, where my shooting was, 4 people were murdered and 3 of us were shot and injured. So
when you went to work that day, it was obviously just what was your normal shift?
The nice thing about being a game warden, your normal shift is usually what it demands of you or what you need to do that day. So whether you sign on at 8, whether you sign on at 9, whether you sign on 11, as long as you get your work done, everybody's happy. So you're your own boss basically. And that day, one of the things that Fish and Game officers do, we do a lot of outreach. We do a lot of public interaction. So the Lancaster Fair was just getting ready.
Okay.
And, you guys have all this computer stuff. We didn't have computer stuff back then. So I was doing this huge poster of Coos County and the officers and where they patrolled. So I had traced out Coos County on an overhead projector. I'm sure nobody knows what an overhead projector is. So,
yeah.
So I put that up on the screen and I traced it all out.
Math class.
I did all the towns, and then I put pictures of the officers that covered those areas, so at the fair people could see the officers of Coos County and where their patrols were and things like that. So that was actually my day, was working or helping work on display. Colonel Kevin Jordan was actually responsible for the Lancaster Fair, but I was doing the display that year and helping. And that
was the day that was scheduled for you then?
That was the day I scheduled to do it. So I'd been down at the office working on that project. I grabbed a couple reams of paper and stuff for the home office and had a bunch of stuff going on. And I just stopped at Kevin Jordan's house when I heard the call come over the radio of a stolen state police cruiser.
So, for those that don't know, 2 New Hampshire State Police troopers, Scott Phillips and Leslie Lord, were shot in line of duty that day. And what time of the day did that happen? Do you remember?
I think the call came in around 2. Don't quote me on that, but it was a nice sunny day. Yeah. Could have been a little later.
Okay.
Not really sure.
And we'll get into the complete details of how they died. But so the call went out for the state police cruiser that was stolen. Did anything come out on the radio prior to that? Were they able to?
No, it was a Signal 1000, so everything shut down fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And the radio communication back then wasn't so good. So it was in and out. That Stratford country, you could get Coos, the dispatch, the county dispatch, and that was pretty much it.
Could you even get Troop F?
No.
Not at all, huh?
No, and it's one of those things that we struggled with, and it's getting better and better.
Yeah.
But today, I mean, you guys, I'm sure radio communication is hard.
Still spotty.
Yeah, in the greater, I think of some of that Errol country. It's pretty rare. We have better cell phone reception now than we have radio communication.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
so you got that call for that stolen state police cruiser. So what happened was the guy who murdered the 2 troopers had taken one of their cruisers and went back to his home, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what happened from there?
Yep. From everything I understand, he had changed and basically took the cruiser and headed south towards Stratford, New Hampshire, where I met up with him because when I heard the call, I headed north to see what I could do to help.
Okay.
And
were you guys going to like a central rally point, or were you just going to the general vicinity?
Yep. Just the only thing that had been put out was a stolen state police cruiser.
Okay. And
it was Scott Phillips's cruiser, which was, very odd. Scott was pretty squared away. So, but that was the only information.
Did you know that these guys had passed already?
No.
You had nothing?
No information at all. So it wasn't sent out there.
Did you know Scott well?
I knew Scott very well. I'd worked with him the day before. He had some break-ins in Cream Poke and Stewartstown and needed a 4-wheel drive to get up in there.
Okay.
So he jumped in my cruiser and we went up there and he investigated the break-ins. So we'd been at a wedding that weekend too as well. So yeah, I knew him very well, and so Leslie Lord.
Well, I know Corey, and if he's anything like his father,
my
he's a great guy.
Yeah, Leslie was great. He got me out of a few jams. I got stuck behind a lock gate once and got the cruiser stuck, and he came up with but not before he took pictures.
We've never been there, Phil, have we?
Yeah.
Nope.
Not before he took pictures. I mean, he took the old camera out and took pictures before he helped me. So
that was going on even back then.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And he was a regular at coffee too. Certainly, just great guys. So
he started out as he was the chief of Colebrook, wasn't he?
Pittsburgh,
okay.
Yeah,
and then
came on with state police, or back at this, the motor vehicle side of it. So they used to be separate, and then they come back to state police and switch out.
There's a whole separate division then.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
But when he was shot and killed, he was a trooper at that change. But it had to be pretty close proximity, because if you look at all the pictures that you see of Les Lord, he's in his highway enforcement uniform, different than the state police.
Okay.
So it was fairly recent that they'd probably been switched over because he hadn't had a new picture, or he just didn't have a new picture, one or the other. So.
Yeah, either way. And if Corey's anything like his father, I know he's a lot
like his father.
He's a great guy. So, and so you went to the area in which you thought you could.
I was just heading north, basically on Route 3, and I actually saw the state police cruiser, and it crossed over into Vermont. So, and I had called that into the county, basically told them I was behind the state cruiser, and it had moved into Vermont. So, and I was following it.
You're following, how far close were you behind them?
Actually, I'd seen it at a distance follow in. So as I went to make the corner, the left-hand corner to go across the bridge into Vermont, there was a K car, white K car that had yelled, "Turn off your lights." And I didn't recognize the drivers at the time, but it was the liquor enforcement.
Okay.
Do you remember those K cars that were like boxy things, Aries K cars? Probably not long, but yeah. So anyways, that's what liquor enforcement was using at the time. Okay. Not to Google it. Maybe I'm wrong on the I think that's what it is.
New Hampshire liquor enforcement?
Yes, New Hampshire liquor enforcement. So, but it gave me enough to say that was odd, and I cut them off actually to follow. But it just, something just told me that's just strange. And I did turn off my lights too. It was kind of odd. But I got to the intersection, and it's one of those intersections where there's a right, there's a left, there's a straight ahead, and I can see the right for quite a ways. I can see the straight ahead for quite a ways, and off to the left is a bridge abutment because the train goes right there. Mm-hmm. So it's actually an underpass for the train tracks, and like a lot of them, they're only a single lane around the North Country. A lot of those have changed, but they only made it for a single track because they only needed to get a horse and carriage through.
Yeah.
So as I was looking over there, I could see some dust hanging in the air.
Okay.
So like someone had just pulled in there. So I'm like, well, that makes sense. He hasn't had time to get out of my view, even on that spot, unless he pulls off somewhere. And there's a long driveway just on the other side of that abutment. So, and actually I knew there was something on that other side of abutment. Mm-hmm. So as I went down there, I actually kind of creeped, cut the pie, so to speak, with a cruiser. And kept cutting. And finally, all of a sudden, I see a guy standing there with a state police campaign hat, and he's poised with an AR-15.
Did he have on the uniform?
I don't believe so.
Or the jacket?
I don't think he had a jacket on either. It was just the campaign hat. And now I know it's an AR-15, but I didn't know it's then. He had a gun pointed at me. Okay. And about that time, I felt the impact. So, as soon as I came into his sight picture, I think he pulled the trigger.
You got shot.
Obviously. I got shot.
Yeah. Was the first time you got shot
The first time was in the badge.
In the badge. Okay.
In the badge, but I had the window open and my arm, like a lot of people, I was up driving. So I went from my badge to my bicep and exited my shoulder. So
it was one round.
That was the first round.
Okay.
And at that round, I dropped, because again, my training in North Carolina, I always accustomed this is a whole nother story, which is it's really good. Why, cover versus concealment.
Correct. Yeah.
So dropping down, remembering that engine is your best cover, and trying to get low, and that saved my life because there was several bullet holes through my seat. So in getting down there and then hearing my cruiser taking rounds, I hit it in reverse, and actually I drove up I backed up fairly slowly, and the Banville store is right there. There's a lot of people out sitting on the thing, and I just stuck my head up just enough to see them, to tell them, I yelled profanity at them to get out of there. So
how far was he away from you when you started shooting?
Probably 20 feet.
Oh, he was that close.
He was that close.
Wow, that's close.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So when I cut the pie, he could see me as much as I could see him.
Were you able to get any rounds off?
No. It was basically a reaction. I mean, it was an ambush.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
So and then from there, when I'm backing up, telling those people to leave, that's when the adrenaline dumped. So, and I start hearing my cruiser take more rounds. So I just stepped on it and flying back across that intersection, and I hit this tree, enormous silver maple. And actually the silver maple broke and it probably stopped me from going into the Connecticut River at a high speed.
Because I always read that you had.
Yeah, well, the tree broke, and actually the whole cruiser dipped over on the embankment.
Okay.
So I opened the door, and I was hanging. Basically, I dropped probably 8-10 feet down because the cruiser was kind of hanging in midair, and that tree was holding it. So, and at that time, I had my shotgun tucked right up next to my seat. So it was easy access, but my arm wasn't working. It was laying in my lap. And I remember looking down and saying, come up, pick up.
Had you known you got shot in your bicep yet?
No, I knew I was shot, but I didn't know what was going on except my arm wasn't working. So I was just, and it wasn't working. So I'm looking at that shot going, that's going to do me absolutely no good because I can't pump it.
Mm-hmm.
So, hindsight, I probably would have grabbed it and used it with one hand. And that's where your training comes in after why we take these events and we look at them and we dissect them. I mean, anything from, looking at what was done wrong with George Floyd to any shooting incident, and trying to learn from the bad. So we're
not Monday morning quarterbacking people. I mean, we are in trying to learn from what happened. And that's it.
That's exactly what it is. I'm not, well, you do place fault at some things.
You do.
So,
yes.
But if we can learn from the bad things, I think, that we're just making ourselves better people and moving on. So,
so you get out of the car and you took an 8 to 10 foot drop out of that.
Me retrofishing to hindsight, but because there's a lot of reasons you should have grabbed the shotgun.
But I mean, it is what it is.
Right.
At the same time.
Yep. So I drop out of there. I still have my handgun, 40 caliber 6-hour P229, and I work myself up the bank, and I work into some pricker bushes. So if he approaches my cruiser, I have laid in ambush now, and I'm laying flat in the pricker bushes, waiting for him to come.
Get any radio call off? Never
got a radio call off. But those guys that were in the liquor inspector's car, certainly had, and what announced to me they had pulled up, and as I'm laying there and I'm breathing heavy, and and the things I remember and I always remember is when you get blood on your handgun, it is slippery, wicked slippery. So it's so great to see some of these grips coming out on handguns that are like sandpapery, or actually you can actually grip it because take some vegetable oil, put it on your hand, and try to hold your handgun, because that's exactly what I thought is it was so hard to hold your handgun with blood all over it. So, and I'm trying to hold my bicep at the same time as maneuver my handgun. But laying a point down and then just thinking I got to let him get close because I got a handgun.
Did you try to put a tourniquet on your arm at all?
No, I didn't. I never even thought about that. Good things now. Tourniquets weren't even around then, weren't even talked about really. But that was certainly something that, retro, that would have been a good thing. Direct pressure, holding it into myself because it was useless. It wasn't even moving.
While trying to hold cover.
Right, trying to hold cover and control my breathing, because I remember I was just like panting like crazy. Yeah. And then I'm sitting there waiting, and then I start hearing my name being called. So I drop back down to the river, and I work my way up to where I run into one of the guys, Steve Breton from Colebrook PD, that was there. Then he basically got somebody to grab their car and bring me to the hospital, and that. What's that?
No, I'm saying, so you got shot in the badge. Did you take any fragments from that at all?
Oh yeah, I still hold fragments today.
You do?
Yep. I had a year later, I had a fragment removed from my shoulder, 1.5 centimeters, which there was something wrong with my shoulder, and basically every time I moved, it was cutting me. So, and then it was exploratory surgery because they kept doing X-rays and they couldn't find anything. Mm-hmm. But when they opened me up orthoscopically, he's like, yeah, I'm going to go in there. If I find something, you're going to wake up and you'll probably be opened right up. And I woke up, I was opened right up, and he had a 1.5 centimeter piece of shrapnel that was left from there. So shot with a, 223 round and fragmented it because it hit that badge. So
you went right to Colebrook Hospital?
Yeah, right to Colebrook Hospital.
And where'd you go from there?
They flew me to Dartmouth.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, they had a helicopter there. Again, they were wondering about more casualties, but they didn't want to hold the helicopter there, so they flew me down to Hanover in the helicopter.
Were you bleeding? I mean, obviously you had been shot. Were you bleeding profusely from what you remember?
No, I don't. No. And I don't remember. And Steve Breton kept yelling at me, "You're not going to die. You're not going to die." And I said, "I know I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die." Yeah. So, good things. And actually, I was, I got wicked thirsty. You know, those adrenaline dumps. You just get so parched. And I'm like, I need a drink. And I remember him going through that whole. There was a Jeep Cherokee, and he was going through there looking for something to drink, and just tossing that poor guy's car. And I'm like, just swing into the store there at the Blue Mountain and get me a drink. And he's like, no, we're not doing it. And as we're going through Colebrook, he's hanging out the windows. The guy's beeping the horns, and they're trying to clear the road. And yeah. And I just bought when I got up to the hospital, I just bought a new pair of boots, and they were going to cut them off. And I was like, don't cut my boots. And next thing I know, my Lieutenant Eric Stoll's pulling my boots off. You know, he's like, yep, don't cut his boots. I'll get them. So, yeah, some of the humorous things that happened that day, for sure.
I mean, you look back at it now, you can laugh. And
you got to take the good with the bad.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And so you go down to the hospital down in Colebrook, down in Dartmouth. How long were you down there for? Do you remember?
3 days.
That was it, huh?
Yep, that was it. They released me in 3 days.
It seems like you've been a fast turnaround now.
Yeah.
Shot.
Yeah. The first day they had a drain in it. It looked like a pork roast. And then when they took that drain out, I was on morphine. I remember my eyes just watering up. It was just that had to be some serious pain coming out of there. Then they stitched me back up, and they sent me on my way. And I went actually directly from the hospital to the funerals. So Kevin Jordan came down, picked me up, and we went from there to the funerals that day. So
was Pete? Was your dad on state police at that time?
No, he wasn't a trooper yet.
No.
I remember when he got the call. The Berlin ERT team was actually like almost brand new, and they were looking to go up. And I don't remember what the miscommunication was. It was a long time ago. I know that they didn't go, but I remember him being like, he's ready to go, and him talking about it a little bit. And he was friends with both the troopers who had passed, and I remember going to visit them after. But that was a long time ago. I don't really talk to him about it a whole lot.
Yeah,
but
so you get released from the hospital, and you go to the funerals and whatnot. And did they have you do a debrief after that with anybody?
They had New York came over. New York DEC, their law enforcement division, actually had a critical incident response team back then. So they sent 2 guys from New York over, who actually debriefed officers, and they came and saw me as well. So for the short term, so came and visited me in the hospital. And
how long were you out of work?
A year.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
It was a year recovery for sure, and almost a year to the date. I think I went back in August of the following year.
Wow, I didn't know it was that long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like my second operation was actually I think it was February 14th, because they closed. I think it was around Valentine's Day of the following year for that second operation to remove the shrapnel.
You still kept the badge, right?
The badge is on display in Concord.
Is it?
Yep, just outside the law enforcement division.
Because I always knew, or I was always told, before I got to the academy, I guess your truck was on display down at the academy. How many rounds did they take out of the truck?
There was 8 rounds out of the truck. Wow.
And they always said they told me, because it was gone by the time I got there. Was it down at the academy?
It was. It was down at the academy for a long time. Unfortunately, the state actually made them put that as a vehicle on their inventory, which doesn't even make any sense. So they had to actually process that out so they could get another vehicle. So rather than it doesn't make much sense, but that's the state. So
yeah,
I'd like to go back and fix a bunch of things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I was told they had that down at the academy, and then they had the markers, didn't they?
Yes. So we ran dowels through it, and I can get you those pictures. You could probably post those too. But it was, definitely to show the trajectory. And had I not been trying to lay behind that motor, that would have definitely,
Had you shifted the rounds from the windshield down to the actual engine compartment to try to shoot through it at you, or?
No, it was all. He had practiced apparently, from understanding. He was a very good shot, and he had grouped his rounds appropriately, thinking I was still sitting in that seat.
Wow.
So had I not dropped down behind that, try to get behind that engine, or even the second round. I'm not sure when I moved back to, yell at those people. I'm not sure where the first, because I heard another one come through. So I'm not sure where that would come through, but I was still pretty flat out. I just poked my head up enough to yell at them.
There's a reason why I asked this question is because, or this upcoming question is because now in the new Explorers, I have noticed when you go from either park to drive, or if you're going from drive to reverse or from reverse to drive, whatever it is, and it's happened while other guys have been going to assist in foot pursuits, where I've gone by and I had to throw it in reverse, and I throw it in reverse and put it right into drive, and it shuts off on me. Everything shuts off. Did you?
What we used to have on our cruisers, and I didn't have it on the one, is you had to step on the brake in order to shift it.
Okay.
So, and I think you probably still have it on the cruisers, but we didn't. And there used to be a mechanical thing that you could take off of it. So my next cruiser got that taken off of too. So I didn't have to step on the brake. I could just shift it without ever stepping on the brake.
Did you come to a stop when you'd seen him and then just throw right in the back? Because I guess that's my question really, is just because, my experience with the cruiser shutting off on me, I'd be freaking out right now. Because if I try to... it'd been, I first time I got shot, I put in reverse and I backed up. Just gone.
Pretty, not slowly, but not fast either. So I got to the Banville store and alerted those people to get out of there. And, the second time I was already in reverse, I just stepped on it and laid some rubber there.
Wow.
Yeah. But, those are definitely things you need to think about, because I removed that off the next cruiser too, so I didn't have to. But other officers, theirs wasn't. So I remember Mark Ober and I had a night hunting case, and I was in his cruiser, and I was the chase vehicle, and we had somebody shoot our decoy after dark. So it was game on. Well, I couldn't go because I was like, what the heck? I can't shift this. And I can't imagine, because again, the adrenaline dump. So I'm trying to shift this thing into drive and it's not moving. Well, it dawns on me, I'm not stepping on the brake because I usually don't have to. So now I got to tell my brain to step on it. And then I left a nice furrow where I was.
Yeah.
But so it's knowing your equipment and knowing that it shuts off, and it's very, very important. And the nice thing is we have, take-home cruisers, and you become intimate with that cruiser to the point where when they want to give you a new cruiser, you generally don't want a new cruiser.
Not at all. Exactly. You know how it runs. You know what its bells and whistles are.
Yeah.
I want to let me stick with this one here. It's old trusty.
Exactly. Because it's part of you. You know it. You know where all your stuff is. You don't have to find new places to put things.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of a take-home cruiser.
Yeah, I remember the difference. When I was working down in southern New Hampshire, there was the engine kill switch underneath where it is, and I didn't know about it. And that was one of the pranks that people would pull on the new guys, is the ones that don't know about it. I remember I had to park it for an accident, and I go up there and I'm handling, the accident up the top of the hill, and I literally can't get this thing into drive, and they're just sitting there watching, laughing their ass off. But I'm like, oh yeah, like flip that back up, and you're all set. I'm like, oh geez, okay, I didn't know about that, but
never forget though.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Sometimes we learn the hard way, but and then the decisions you make after, being in a shooting, tactically, it really starts to make you think, this can be a very dangerous job.
Yeah. Did you ever go through, so you went through 2 debriefs, you said?
Well, they came and visited me at the hospital, basically. I ended up going into counseling, not ordered, but not really, kind of softly said, hey, I'll do this for you if you do this for me.
Okay.
So,
I'm
and basically, if you want to transfer or something like that down the road, but you're going to have to go through counseling.
I'm very pro support for counseling and mental health.
It's the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have made probably a 23-year career without it. So, because, of course, and I think in this day and age, we're much better with counseling, but I think 24 years ago, it was a whole different thing, and you don't want to be the wimp, the thing. So I was kind of ordered but not ordered to go. And Paula Booth, she's a great lady. She's still doing counseling with the Employees Association. I'm going to get it all wrong, Paula. But we actually have something within state government that, we can go and get counseling. Employees, I'm going to have to read that off some other time. But anyways, Paula Booth was there. Again, she's a very attractive lady, long hair, and I'm like, I'm never talking to this woman. So I walk in the door. I'm like, yeah, I'm never talking to her. Yeah, 15 minutes later, I'm talking. I'm spilling my guts like a little baby.
Yeah.
I'm just telling her everything in the world and going through that process. We met, every week for a while. And then, it was funny. I remember the last day walking in the door and she's like, you don't need to be here, do you? I'm like, nope. So it's just, it's amazing what communication and getting out of your system to somebody you can trust about and actually can give you tools to deal with it does, rather than holding it in and trying to digest that. Then it's different for everybody, because some people can digest that. They hold it in, they can digest it, and that's just part of them. I spoke with a trooper, it shot several people, and it was just part of the job.
Yeah, I know.
Part of the job.
Phil and I were talking last time we were on the podcast about mental health and even the stigma that it has even nowadays in 2020, and I can't imagine in 1997 when that happened. And it's suck it up, be the tough guy, don't talk about it. What the hell's wrong with you? And what are you, a wimp? And nowadays, it's becoming more known, and especially within the law enforcement community, but even just in normal everyday life for people. And I think that's definitely a great thing. I mean, I've seen a counselor. I have no qualms about telling people that, and it's done wonders for me, and just even your communication with everybody that's going on in your life.
Absolutely. She gave me this little phrase to say to myself: is healthy people get help first. So it'll stick with me forever. Healthy people get help first. So that just tells you you're healthy, and it explains a lot of different things too. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the mark of Cain. What is it? It's which you think everybody's looking at you and talking about you because you have the mark of Cain. Yep. And in my case, I think everybody was, especially when I went back to the Colebrook area. I'd go out to a restaurant, sit down, and I could hear people talking about me. I actually met with a different counselor one time, and the guy behind, and we met at a restaurant. The guy behind was listening in and said some comments after too. So, but it's like it's that mark of Cain, and to understand that is so much better than, in my case it was real, but you don't understand that. And then survivor's guilt is the other thing, having to deal with survivor's guilt. Why me? I'm the young guy. I don't have a family. These two guys had families. Why am I alive and they're not? So it's a lot of self-evaluation, learning about yourself and how your body deals with things. And that's everybody. Just and they have the tools, and they understand because they deal with a lot of it. And you may not get the right counselor the first time.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So I encourage people, your first meeting with a counselor, it may not go well. You may say that sucks. Try a different counselor. Because, thank God I got a really good one the first time, and that was intentional, I think. When the colonel called over to get somebody, he wanted to get the best, so he had Paula come, and she was in charge of the whole program.
Was she law enforcement specific?
She is not. She's New Hampshire State employee specific. So,
okay.
But she certainly, has a good feeling of law enforcement. So,
yeah, because I think that's something that's even picked up steam even after the wars have started back in like 03, 04. I mean, even the military, they're always preaching now mental health, but I think even after that, you talk about all the counselors that have just come even for specific for military and specific now to law enforcement and first responders. So I think that's a good thing, but it was obviously beneficial for you to go through that, Wayne.
Right, and such an impact. My last day on the job, I called Paula up and said, "Hey, just wanted to say I'm retiring and thank you."
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's how much impact. And I wouldn't have done it without her.
Were you married at the time when this all happened?
No, single.
Okay.
Yeah, so I certainly wouldn't have made it through counseling because, and you guys know it as incidents. I used to get when usually when we go into domestics and I was backing up a trooper or something, Erica Johnson, I went to help him one time. And, the guy's like, Carl Draga didn't do a good enough job. And said that to me, and I wanted to drive my fist through the back of his skull.
How did you not?
It's tough. It's tough. It's just, but that's the reaction they want you to do. They want to get under your skin, and they want you to. So not to give them that, but for someone to put themselves in our shoes, and after somebody's killed your friends and shot you, and to have someone say that, that's the kind of things police officers deal with. So and
see how you would react right now.
Yeah, no. So I transferred out of the Colebrook area for those reasons, and that's when I moved to Stark, 20 years ago.
Okay.
Oh, and it was just enough move, so those incidents didn't happen a whole lot, because they were pretty, every time you deal with them, people wanted to get under your skin, so that became an issue. So a little move south. I didn't really want to leave the area, the guys that I had worked with, because they're like family. And no matter where you work, it's the people you work with. I tell that to new recruits all the time and new trainees. It's not so much where you work, it's the people you work with make your job for you.
Yeah, that goes without saying. It's if you have that good support system, it makes a world of difference. If you like the guys you're working with, the men and women, it makes life just so much easier. I've been under the stressful conditions even at work where you just, I like to say that my career I rated about like a C minus, and I've done a lot less than people and a lot more than others, but especially you, I've never, knock on wood, never have been involved in officer involved shooting like that, but to go to work and it being a stressful day just because you're going to work and the people that you're working with, it can make life either great or absolutely shitty. So it's liking the people you're working with and liking everyone there. It makes a world of difference.
Yeah, and I'd never rate yourself because, you're always striving to do a good thing.
Right.
And by doing this podcast, John, you're reaching out, you're trying to do a connection with other people to try to have them understand whether it's an officer involved shooting or anything. And sometimes our skill sets are different than others. Mm-hmm. So, and to find those skill sets and what you're good at is, the best thing to do. So, by putting this out there, I think that's I wouldn't rate yourself as a C plus. That just that bothers me, man.
I appreciate that.
Every officer's an A to me, until they become an F.
Yeah, right. But so what were so you come back to work, and a year later, after going through the counseling, the physical therapy, and were you still dealing with arm problems?
I've dealt with arm problems ever since, but then I think the alternative, I'm pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. So what you go back to work and work in normal patrol in the Stark area?
Yeah, well, Colebrook actually.
Colebrook, okay.
Yep. No, I did. I did another few years up there.
Okay.
Before I transferred.
And what were the cases you were working back then?
Just fishing game cases.
A lot of.
It wasn't too much longer. I got assaulted by a guy over a turkey, which made the front page of the news, and that was.
What was that story?
Oh my goodness! You can read it in the News and Sentinel. I made the front page.
Over a turkey.
Over a turkey.
What was the assault? Were you? I'd never heard about this, so... Yeah,
I don't even know if I want to talk about this one. But I will say Scott's Stepanian saved me from probably a hefty charge. So, so we had some good backup there. But it's still in the News and Sentinel if you go back to probably 98.
Oh, wow.
Front page news. I could go into a lot of stuff on that. But
all right, we'll leave it to
that's almost a whole nother podcast.
We will leave it to that Google search engine, and I will type in a few words to see.
I don't think the News and Sentinel's in the Google search engine. Maybe they are.
So when did you start doing the search and rescue portion of Fishing Game?
That's part of a fishing game officer from the beginning.
Yeah.
So that's just what you do as a trainee. As a trainee, they send you to every big search too, because if we get a search going on that takes numerous people, then you can actually they assign game wardens to teams too. So for big searches and such like that. So it's part of being a game warden, especially as a trainee. They're sending you to everything. There's activity within the district you're usually going to, and search and rescue is such a big part of that. So it's been from the beginning, and it's I used to like to hike. I used to hike recreationally, and then when I got this job, I think the first year I hiked, and then I hike for work now. It's work.
And then you don't want to do it any time off.
Nope.
No, not at all.
I just started breaking back into it. So I took a hike to Rogers Ledge the other day, and So that was good.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what I've told people. And then like the ride-alongs we do get, and some of the guys, just doing it because they want police experience. And like, I want to be a conservation officer. I'm like, okay, why do you want to be one? And they love to hunt and they love to hike. I'm like, all right, so you want to go do this a minimum of 40 hours a week, and you want to do it on your time off too? And I'm like, oh, never thought about that.
Yeah, no. If you love to hunt, we hunt in some of the premier spots because we know where things are going on and such like that. So we know where good animals are. So we hunt in the better spots, but the time we have. I mean, there's no way I'm getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go hunting. I'm that 9 o'clock game warden because I've been getting up at 6 o'clock for the last 3 weeks, and that's the last time I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock. So, but I've been pretty effective, getting up, at 9 o'clock and going out there, and then investigating cases. It's kind of funny because some of the areas that we have cases in, I like to hunt because even though I'm on my own time, I'm kind of learning the area. Eric Fluette and I hunted an area. I shot an 8-point buck, and he made a case out of the area, illegal baiting case. So that worked out, and we get to learn the area, and he helped me drag the deer out, which was great.
Always need someone to help.
You always need somebody to help. It wasn't as big as your bucks, Phil, but
I've only got one in the trophy club.
The last one you shot, right?
Hopefully more, the last one.
That was a massive buck. I remember that.
Yeah, he was 11 points, 220.
Jeez.
Wow. Yeah, he was a big one. My biggest one.
Wow.
And so many people just told me, all right, it's time to retire.
Yeah, that's a deer of a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just so fortunate in that. And to share with my dad. I mean, I'll probably never have that hunt again.
Yeah.
I hope I do. I'd be blessed to, but just that moment was just so awesome together.
No doubt.
How long did you drag it out for?
I got lucky. There was a snow machine trail. I don't know, probably more than a quarter mile away, and just know the area enough, and able to get it there. And from there, it's so much easier. Oh my God! Just when you're not having to drag from one blowdown to the next and under and over. And just to be able to pull them on a straight trail is so much nicer.
Yeah, because that adrenaline stops after a while.
Oh, it's long gone.
All
manual.
No, 220 pound buck in New Hampshire. That's
it's a trophy.
Yeah,
you should see the rack. I was blown away when I saw the post on Facebook.
It's a nice one. Yeah.
Is that normal for about the rest of the country too? 220 or
the East Coast, especially the northern more reaches that you get more body weight.
Yeah.
So, but it's kind of funny when they're talking. They're talking scores out in the Midwest and stuff like that.
We
talk
don't
weights.
Racks.
So, and it's just when you interact with some of these other people from different states, they're like, "Oh yeah, that was like a 270 or something." I'm like, "A 270? There's no way." Like looking at me like I got 3 heads, and I'm thinking weight. They're thinking antler score, which I think 270 would be crazy too.
Yeah, and I kind of want to get it just because I'm curious.
Yeah.
But I don't even know someone who scores. That's the thing. It's
Brian
just
Emerson
it's not up here.
Brian Emerson could score it for you.
Oh,
but what is antler score? Is it the?
It goes on. I couldn't tell you the width, the points, the tines. They got a way that the Boone and Crockett actually scores.
Okay.
So same with bear skulls. They'll measure bear skulls and stuff. So it's whether it's a Boone and Crockett and get in the book.
And that's a lot between the ears and like all the way around.
All
and just
kinds of different things. So there's several. Like I can think. Roscoe Blaisdell is a big scorer too. New Hampshire trophy antlers, So but you could definitely get it scored without too much of a problem.
Yeah, I've got a chip tine too, so that's like.
Oh, it's a minus because it's it's a typical, a non-typical. There's all kinds of things that go into it.
Yeah. Next goal, I want to shoot one with a drop tine. That's like that ideal, just beautiful, non-typical.
You want to hear my worst deer story?
Yep, of course.
We were moving into my house. So moving in. I had moved half a day. I'd been out that morning hunting and I saw some nice tracks. I knew where I wanted to be. So we're moving in and I'm trying to get everything in and rush. And I know last light's coming and we only have like 30 minutes left. So I grabbed my dad. I'm like, I drag him up through the woods. I stand him here and I'm like, I'm going to go over just not too far, drop down. And it's an old tote road that comes up over this knob and it wraps around the knob. And I just make the corner and I look down again, 20 feet away from me. Here's this buck with webbed antlers. They're dark and he's rubbing against a spruce tree. Doesn't even know I'm there and he's rubbing and I'm elevated above him. So I grabbed a 7M08 that I just bought, Browning 7M08, and my normal gun is a 30-06 that my grandfather had. That's what I usually carry, and carry a lot now. So, but the Browning loads from the bottom. So, anyways, I'm telling you for a reason. So I put the scope on, and I actually have to dial it back, and I'm so close that I have to take it off. I have to find him. So I take it off the deer and I bring it back to the crease in his shoulder, and I can see the crease in his shoulder as he's working this. And I've got him mounted on the wall already. As I squeeze the trigger and it goes click. And I'm like, and he blows. A deer blowing is, I can't even tell you how much snot comes out of a deer's nose when he blows. He blows and it's like 2 cones coming out of those nostrils, and it shoots like 3 feet out. And he's like a statue and doesn't move. I mean, he is just so still. And all I could think of to myself is either I didn't put a round in that or the round didn't go off. So either way, I got to work that bolt.
Yeah.
And I know what's going to happen when I work that bolt, but I don't have much of a choice. So I start working that bolt and he bolts.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but he's way down and I can just see him through the brush. And I'm trying to get the scope on him. And all of a sudden he bolts up and he's coming across that road that I'm standing on. And yeah, I don't know how fast he was going, but as he was running as fast as he could, and I let a Hail Mary out as he came into the scope. But I bet by the time I squeezed, he was gone out of the scope, because that was how much, you know. And when if you've seen them run, they're
deer,
like a rocket.
Yeah, I mean, my dad's told me tricks and tips. I'm pretty sure he's hit running deer, and I'm sure I missed them too. And I don't think I'm there yet to even try. You know,
I just had that spot and waited, and when he came in, he was
that's the thing. I
going
mean,
too
like
fast.
I think it's a both eyes open thing. As soon as he's, the front
I
of his
couldn't
shoulder
track
hits.
him.
Yeah.
And do you lead a running deer? Do you not lead a running? There's all kinds of things. But
yeah, I think you got to wait in an opening exactly like you did and hope for the best.
Yeah, that's what I did. It didn't work out, and I just never ran that bolt to put a round in it.
Oh man.
Yep, never had a round in it.
Yep.
Yeah, the best deer I've seen in the woods. So close. Webbed antlers, that nice dark. I had him out on the wall. I could still see him today.
Yeah.
Now he's made an impact on me, man. Jeez. So, but yeah, that's my worst deer story.
Yeah. Yep.
No, I've never gotten into
got
hunting. I mean, my family was not, hunters growing up, but I mean, I actually plan on asking Phil or maybe you to take me out this fall and
in the North Country, you hunt differently, Phil, because you actually go for deer. I look for like little mountain peaks or little saddles in those mountains where I'm like, I've never been up there, and that looks like a deer crossing right there. So I'll take my day and I'll hike up into that saddle and enjoy the day. I get there, sure enough, there'll be deer sign. And one night I actually sat there until dark. I'll never do that again, because I almost killed myself coming out of the woods, because it was all the beech leaves were down, and I don't know how many holes I stepped into and took some tootlies. And I'm like, I'm gonna break a leg up here because I can't see anything getting out of the woods. So I had a headlamp, but it was So
still
anyways,
not good enough. It's nowhere near enough light still.
Yeah, and I had like a 2-mile hike out of the woods in all that leaf litter that I was just stepping in these holes and this and that. I mean, I was like, Wayne, you're going to break a leg up here. So, yeah, I'm not going to stay till dark in those saddles again unless I'm spending the night.
Yeah. And see, that's something that I kind of want to get into is look at a place, like you said, that's miles away. And basically, it's a half day to get there, set up camp, and then hunt, 2 full days there.
Yeah.
And, learn it. And that way you're just there and you have so
that
much more time.
That would be nice if the weather cooperates.
Well, that's the other issue. I mean, just how much stuff you're going to hike in there so that you are prepared. Because that's a huge thing about, being in the woods around here. How fast does it turn?
It gets cold quick. I went elk hunting in October, and I had planned on backpacking out and setting up a spike camp in the woods so you didn't have to hike in and out. Yeah, I could drop down to -5 every night. I'm not sleeping in a bivvy at -5.
No, it's cold.
So I was hiking 2.5 hours in and 2.5 hours out. Yeah. Yeah, well, thank goodness I got one on the 3rd day. I was pretty happy about that.
Where was that?
It was Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it a guide service that brought
Nope. I did it on my own.
Really?
Yep. I'm like that. I'm stubborn. I mean, I'm not. I hate to pay a guide money that I know something I can do on my own. So reached out to the local game warden, gave me areas, and then I started researching those areas. And I got there 5 days prior to and actually scouted, which was probably the most awesome elk hunt I had, was scouting. During the first rifle season, generally they don't bugle because they're just getting done. Well, I had watched probably a mile away. I'd seen these elk come out, and I worked my way down. Of course, I knew I was coming, so they worked their way back in the brush. But the wind was perfect in my face, and I got to right where they had gone in the woods, and they were still like 30 yards in the woods, and the cows were mewing, and all of a sudden that bull elk let out a bugle, and I was like, oh my goodness! That was the first time I ever heard a live bugle about 30 yards away. And I'm sold on it. It's an incredible sound, and talk about adrenaline. And this is all scouting. And he bugled probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. And all of a sudden across the valley, another one opens up back to him. And I'm like, and this is like a big, huge valley. And I hunt 2.5 hours to get in there. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is just awesome.
So cool.
Yeah, it was great. And to get so close to those animals where I could hear the cows mewing and then him open up, I mean, that was just incredible. So it was an awesome opportunity. And yeah, but it was a lot of time. I'm glad we did the 5 days in there because the altitude was around 10,000 feet, getting used to that. And just all the time you have to drink and learning that country. And again, I spotted where I wanted to go and hike, and it worked out. I mean, the elk were where I thought they were going to be, except when it came hunting season.
Right.
But I did scout one area where I shot the cow. I had a cow tag, and I shot her in an area I'd scouted, and it worked out fairly good. So I was pretty tickled about that. So
yeah, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
It's an experience. Out west hunting is just different.
Different level.
And John, hunting's it's an experience, is what it is. It's not about killing the animal. It's about getting out in the woods and just having that experience and seeing the scenes you see. And the day goes quick. I'm like, I got an hour before dark. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And it's I want to say spiritual because it's just it's pretty cool.
Right. I mean, being out in the woods is just with nature, and even when you get to the top of the mountain, it's just when you're out there hiking, it's like I said, cathartic, and you're out there and you're overlooking literally the entire country from what you can see.
Yeah. And you're taking your time. You're studying the topography. You're studying the lines, and you're taking your time. And yeah, that's why I like picking out a spot and kind of going to it. And because in the North Country, let's face it, the deer are few and far between. Yeah. And then you can get into them and then work around. I mean, I just got lucky. The day me and Eric were working, a case. We're hunting the area to learn the area so we can later use it in a case. And I could never, when I called him on the radio and told him I shot one, he was less than a mile away, never even heard the shot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you hunt a lot while you were still working?
Not as much.
No, just didn't want to be out there.
Those 2 days that you get off, you're almost recouping because you're burnout, you're tired. Maybe one of those two, you'd get out, or you had best intentions of getting out, but you are really recharging your batteries because you're putting a lot of time in day and night when hunting season's here. Yeah. So you're pretty exhausted come your 2 days off. Do you get into hunting? Yes. There's a lot of guys that still hunt. Some incorporated. I know Matt Holmes, he was incorporating a walk every morning before he went out to work and bringing his gun along. But, and he kept doing it, and eventually got a deer by taking a walk in the morning with his gun. So
how's he doing now?
He's doing good.
Yeah,
he's doing good. Yeah.
And what year were you promoted to sergeant?
2008.
Okay. How was that transition for you?
It wasn't bad. Our sergeants still have a patrol area. Mm-hmm. They do the training, and they're in charge when the lieutenant's not there. So that was an easy transition. Hardest job there is in Fish and Game, I think, because you still have patrol, you still have all those responsibilities. Then you get tackled with all the training aspects for the district and a whole lot of other things, inventory, equipment, and then you're the lieutenant when the lieutenant's off. So it's the toughest job in Fish and Game is being the sergeant.
So you still had to do the search and rescues, and you're out there investigating your own crimes.
Being a sergeant, you don't know if you're going to be support and helping running a mission, or if you're going to actually be hiking, because you can go either way. As a lieutenant, you're not going to hike unless you want to hike, and the only time I hiked, I got mad. So, because I couldn't get anybody to help, so I went up and helped, and yeah. So,
and I mean, people listening, you're going up Mount Washington, and Mount Washington is home of what was, I don't know if it still is, but the fastest recorded wind at a manned station on the Earth.
On the Earth, yeah.
Over 230 miles an hour, I believe. And it's not like you're going out there for a leisurely hike when you're going out there and doing search and rescues. I mean, you're going out there in extreme conditions because people go up there and it's a nice sunny day when they leave the bottom of the mountain and they get to the top, and it could either be snowing or
I've seen it snow in July on Wash.
Yep. I mean, just the other day they had not an avalanche, but snow collapse on a guy, or
Yep, it was an ice bridge, and he actually went under the ice bridge, and it collapsed on top of him.
Yeah, the Tuckerman Arch.
Yeah. Foolish
and it's
things.
late in July right now, and it's been 90 degrees.
Yeah, and the pictures is all big chunks of ice still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they filmed. Oh God, I forget what movie they filmed, but it was people come to Mount Washington to prepare for Everest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they filmed in one of the Everest movies at Mount Washington. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me right now. I'll probably remember after we get done with this. But so, do you have any of the memorable rescues from up there?
Oh, memorable. One of the ones that I was training was called, the gentleman's name was Halpern, and he actually died of hypothermia. He was frozen in a brook when we found him, and he didn't have much clothing on left because the thing with hypothermia, you take off your clothes. And he was frozen in a brook. And I remember wearing my snowshoes up there. And when I got up there, and this is all the trainee stuff, the rookie stuff that you do that is stupid. I took my snowshoes off. Yeah. There's about 30 feet of snow up there. So, and the guys around me certainly knew what was going to happen. So as soon as I stepped out of my snowshoes, I went right to my armpits. So
you're not rescue number 2.
Yeah, and then you waddle around for a while with all the other guys there trying to put your snowshoes back on. And me being the trainee, they're like, Wayne, get the victim in the litter.
Yeah.
And he's frozen.
Yeah.
Solid sitting position. So I'm trying to get him in the litter, and he's in the sitting position. He's hard to strap in. So I kind of picked him up and I kind of body slammed him, and it was a big crack.
Oof.
And he laid down in, and I remember my FTA going, "What did you do? Did you break him?" And I said, "I don't know." He's like, "Now I got to tell the ME if there's any trauma that it was from putting him in the litter." And I'm like, I didn't know what else to do.
What are you going to do? I mean,
I got him in the litter, and that was a pretty memorable one for me, just because all those rookie things you do. And
did they call a National Guard to come pick him up?
No, we dragged him out on the sled. Huh? Yeah.
Oh, how far up Mount Washington was he?
He wasn't up Mount Washington. He was actually Mountain Clinton.
Okay.
And a drainage there, and it was it was probably 2 miles in, 2 miles out. Yeah, and the snow conditions, it was brutal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
They use less snow machine, less ATV back then too, I'm assuming. I mean, I know they try and do it a lot more now, right? Whenever they can.
We always try, but that one, there was no way.
No way. No trails.
Exactly. You try to get a snow machine and ATV up as close as you can so it's easier on the rescuers coming out. But it's just in the whites, there isn't a whole lot of places that you can actually do that.
Yeah. And how regulated is that? Because it's the whites.
It's the wilderness area, so technically you are not supposed to bring any motorized vehicles into that. They always make the exception for search and rescue, or always have. So
they don't. Well, it's good that they don't give you a hard time then, at least if it is for search and rescue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, certainly life is should be taken to, no matter what it is, if it's for life saving, and especially, the rescuers, most of the New Hampshire as volunteers. So to help relieve that is so critical. If you can take a mile off, it's amazing coming out with somebody what a mile does. Yeah. So we're trying to reduce the risk to rescuers as much as possible, as well as the victim is quicker quicker removed. Although sometimes the ATV goes really slow, just because of the technical aspect of the trail that you're on or something. So
Right.
sometimes it may be quicker to carry some of the areas we get the ATV into.
Now, when I came up in 2012, were you already a lieutenant by then?
No, I was promoted 2013, so I would have been a
2013?
sergeant my first.
Okay.
Yep, your first year. Yeah.
How was that transition to lieutenant?
I was pretty easy. Like I said, the sergeant takes the responsibilities over for the lieutenant when he's in absence. So, used to taking that over. Didn't do all the paperwork. My former lieutenant, Doug Grilinski, kind of started having me do the paperwork, so I was familiar with it.
Okay.
So that was good. So it was an easy transition. I
Were
like
you
being
overseeing
lieutenant.
How many people?
Generally between 6 and 8
Okay.
in the Northern Coast County. Then I was in charge of Operation Game Thief. I was in charge of the airboat team. So
Okay.
had
How
a
was
lot
that?
of. That was great. I love to this day driving the airboat. Eric called me back to operate the airboat because he didn't have any. It was only him as an operator, and he another operator, and he ran it for maybe 30 minutes, and I ran it pretty much the whole day.
Yeah.
Love the airboat. There was a lot of work that went into that because the airboat, we had to bring it. Eric Fluette stripped that thing right down to the basics again and rebuilt that airboat.
Oh, awesome.
And at the same time, we rebuilt our airboat team. So with training, basic airboat operator, we had the refuge actually sent some people up from all over the country to give us airboat training. Maine came down and we trained together. So we got some basic airboat operation through the feds, through the U.S. refuges.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was an awesome, again, a team effort, which is great. And then Operation Game Thief is it's pretty awesome to try to get information to combat wildlife crime. And that's every state generally, and I'll say every state has a type of Operation Game Thief. It may be called something different. I just went down to Maryland last year for Wildlife Crime Stoppers Maryland, which I'm a big proponent of labeling it that way, because when I say Operation Game Thief, if you're not a hunter, John, well, what brings in mind? I mean, game thief. I had a friend he was working with kids, and he actually did like a survey and said, "What does Operation Game Thief mean to you?"
Xbox.
That's
PlayStation.
Exactly what it came down to. Xbox. You're gonna steal my game.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then when you brand it,
There's
wildlife
map on Call of Duty. Game Thief.
Yeah. So, but when you label it Wildlife Crime Stoppers Maryland, you know exactly what they're about.
Exactly.
So, eventually someday I think we'll all start rebranding it that way. But Operation Game Thief has been branded so well among sportsmen that it's so. Maine is Operation Game Thief, New Hampshire, Vermont, Pennsylvania, Texas. And when I rebuilt that too, because when I was handed to it, we hadn't had an Operation Game Thief except for the 1-800 number. We hadn't done anything else really with it. So I looked at Texas and I looked at Maine that had very successful programs. And the one thing that they had that as successful programs is that they had civilian nonprofits involved in their programs.
Okay.
So I created a civilian nonprofit Operation Game Thief board of directors. Basically went out and searched out people that I knew would be good at doing that and working within the law enforcement agency, working with them to help become a nonprofit, to raise money, to give rewards for information, to maintain the phone number, to have texts sent in, and to help supply, when the officers need something. If we have money, we just purchased flashlights for them the other day. So cameras, Operation Game Thief purchased some of these scouting cameras for them as well. So where we can add that the department, maybe doesn't have the funding to do it, if we can justify it being some kind of enforcement tool.
Is it a nonprofit?
It is a nonprofit.
Okay.
So, and generally every state, some states are just directly through the state, and ours was initially when it started in 1987 is the first Operation Game Thief, and it was a nonprofit then, but then kind of died and the state took it over. So I brought it back out of that and put it into a nonprofit again, and it's been working really well.
Oh, wow. Good for you. That's awesome to hear.
And through that, I became actually the president of International Wildlife Crime Stoppers. So you kind of work through their process. So I was the second vice president, then president, and then you stay on the board a year after president, and I still support that. International Wildlife Crime Stoppers. That's
awesome.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
That opened a lot of doors for Wardens Watch podcast. It gave me a lot of contacts nationwide into Canada to do some of these podcasts with them and to reach out to some of these people and get contacts and to make my podcast nationwide, which is worldwide.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Getting into it, it's pretty cool because talking to these guys, we have a listener from Brazil, and I'm pretty excited about that. So,
and you should be.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
Exactly. But
I don't even know if I have someone from Brazil listening. I'm gonna have to go home and check now.
But it's the podcast. I think is just something that's kind of. I think it's taking off right now. It's
connecting to people, and people have niches that they have interest in,
mm-hmm.
so they like to listen to their interests. And I kind of sprung off of Northwoodslaw
mm-hmm.
because I could see, if 30 million people like Northwoodslaw, they're gonna like hearing the backstories, the backstage stories, I call it.
Now, when was New Hampshire Fish and Game approached by Northwoodslaw, or how did that work out?
It's been going on for, I think we're 5 years now or 4 years. So 4 or 5 years now.
I mean, I've been on it. I think I was on it twice, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
As many times as I've been on it.
I've seen that beautiful smile on there before. And I think you were on it too, Phil.
I don't know.
I think so, yeah.
They could have blurred your face, Phil.
Probably. Yeah. I hope so.
But how was that process? I mean, did New Hampshire approach?
No. They approached New Hampshire totally.
Okay.
The Maine was getting done, and they actually inquired of Maine who Maine thought would be good, and they gave Vermont and New Hampshire.
Okay.
So, and Major John Wimsett was kind of instrumental in all that, handling it, and worked with them. To start off the whole process, which at first it was kind of a pain in the butt, but
the process of actually being on the show,
it's just different because you're not used to a bunch of guys bailing out and cameras everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
But believe it or not, you get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the people you're working and interviewing and doing things with don't get used to it, but you're used to it
mm-hmm.
because it happens. So you just get used to it and you almost forget the cameras are there.
Yeah.
And they do such a good job, such good people that are doing that. And it's highlighting, wildlife law enforcement, which I think is an awesome thing to do because we're such small compared to, nationwide enforcement. We're a very small segment of it.
Right. No, it looks like it's interesting. I mean, you see him, and I mean, I've seen Glenn get out of the cruiser 6 times in a row before, just like that perfect shot, and it's just back in the car, so we need it again.
Or take off your hat. Take off your hat. Take your hat again. So just yeah.
How was that? Was it okay?
It was okay.
Yeah.
For people like Glenn, it gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because was constantly on there, constantly doing this, constantly talking about your job. Every time you do something, you have to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
That gets old. I'm kind of glad I was a lieutenant.
Yeah.
So
how many times did they actually follow you in your career?
It's usually search and rescue missions. The colonel and I had my farewell tour with him. They jumped on with us. I remember
seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great episode. I enjoyed it and enjoyed the day too. So we had a good time and it got all on film and it was really good. So, but it's one of the first few search and rescue missions that they filmed. Again, not being familiar, you don't make decisions without letting the producer know, so we can have a film crew here and film crew there.
Gotcha.
And I remember, as the guys are leaving, I gave them their assignments. The producer Ben was like, "Where are they going?" I'm like, I tell him, and he's like, "I need to know that. I need to get that. I don't have a team. I don't have anybody going out with them, And I'm like, okay. I mean, he was yelling at me. I'm like, okay, I get it now. So I call him back. We regroup and we do everything all over again so we can get it on film. And they actually take a film crew, but you don't realize what you're doing. It's just because you just do it. And those guys need to be integrated into the process. So it takes a while for you to get used to it as a lieutenant or even as an officer. Mm-hmm. Hey, Lieutenant, shouldn't I have a film crew with me? Do they want to go with me? I'm like, yeah, let me check. Or, to keep them. Yeah. So it was a learning phase. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I never thought I was going to be on TV.
Yeah. I mean, you're one of the last, like I said, last running police shows on cable TV right now.
Imagine that. Yeah.
That face right there.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Something I never expected to, never wanted to do, but I'm glad I did it and probably kind of put me into podcasting. I remember I was actually at a hunter education banquet, and Jill Kilborn was doing the address to about, there was probably 200 people there. And she said to the whole group, how many people know what podcasts are? And it was maybe out of 200, maybe 20 raised their hand.
What year was this?
Oh, it's probably 2017.
Okay.
And I kind of knew what a podcast was, but I'd never listened to one. And then she started talking about Steve Rinella, the meat eater.
Okay.
And how much she was learning and this and that, and kind of promoted his show, which from then on that's what I started listening to. Mm-hmm. And then I'm thinking, when you retire, you kind of jump off a cliff. That's what I tell everybody. I jumped off a cliff and I was waiting to land, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, well, they say do a job that you love. And I'm like, I was a game warden. I'm already done the job that I love. Yeah. So I'm like, so how can I incorporate being a game warden into another job that I love? And it just hit me, podcasting, telling people about game warden stories, and then kind of like the backside of Northwoodslaw. Is there enough people interested in it? Yeah. So I kind of sprung off of that, and then just starting to learn the process like you're doing, learning what works for you, and then recreating the wheel. It seemed like every 2 weeks, and learning the software. And I keep saying I'm drinking through a fire hose, and it's just so much. And just when I think I get something down, Corona hits, and now I'm doing a Zoom podcast and capturing the video. And then now I bought a video camera, so when I'm on the road, I can videotape it too, and we can post that as well. It's it develops, as you'll see. It creates, but the fact that you can do this in your spare bedroom, and I can do it in my basement, and reach out to people, and they find it entertaining, is awesome. But not only entertaining, but informative and understanding.
Exactly. And that's all we just try to bridge that gap between everybody else and the police or the military, and, just to hopefully, one, brighten people's day, encourage them to seek, one of my main goals is to encourage people to seek mental health help and, seek counselors, and there's nothing wrong with that. And,
And that's police officers too.
Yeah.
It's okay to get help.
Exactly.
Maybe everybody. A lot of these incidents
get
that
rid
we're
of the
seeing,
friggin' stigma.
Could be prevented if people seeked that type of counseling prior to having an incident.
Yeah, exactly. And, in the podcasting world, it's definitely, it started out with, how do I make a podcast? Right on Google. And as you and I were talking about the other day, just going from there and try to figure out, how to get
you're ahead of me, John, because like I said, I got a producer. I send it to him. I pay him money, and so I'm in the red quite a bit, but that's okay.
Yeah, hey, but, that's all right.
I'm learning as I go. Still, I need to be baby steps for me.
So, what year did you retire?
2018.
2018. So it's been pretty much 2 years.
It's been 2 years.
Yeah, and you started podcasting right away.
March of 2019.
Okay. So how many episodes you in are now?
I just did number 40. So coming up on 41.
And you have 2 podcasts.
I do 2 podcasts a month, and we created the new Thin Green Line podcast. Okay. Which John Norris is my partner now, so on both of them. So he does the intro sometimes if I already have a Warden's Watch canned or something. Mm-hmm. He'll come in on those as well. He was a guest on my show to start. Yep. And so we started this Thin Green Line because there was a lot of other people that contribute to wildlife enforcement or conservation that are part of that Thin Green Line that, we would like to talk to. But I wanted to stay Warden's Watch, very warden orientated and maybe on the periphery, but not have guests like Jack Carr. Yeah. Because he's not really game warden. Even though he writes in his, thrillers, he puts game wardens in them. He puts wildlife issues in them. And I love that. So we started the new Thin Green Line, and our first guest is Jack Carr. I am just delighted with it. It's overwhelming to have a former Navy SEAL on who's writing thrillers now, who's going to be on Amazon Prime with a series coming up, and to actually sit down and talk with him and have interaction like that, and the poaching type of things that he incorporates and the passion for the outdoors that he has is just neat to bring him into that Thin Green Line. And to show that conservation side of him is just awesome. So I think it's a really good outlet to do that, so we can talk about some issues. One of my big issues is emotional legislation rather than science-based when it comes to wildlife. Okay. And we're seeing a lot of that. One of the big Western issues is lack of access to federal land. We have some landlocked pieces of federal land. We're talking millions of acres here that people can't access unless they fly in a helicopter and drop out of.
There's the western part of the country.
Western part of the country. Huge problem. So that's another thing, highlight. Endangered species that aren't so endangered anymore, bringing them back off the endangered species list, which takes a whole process, but to put a highlight. And we've just done that recently on the next podcast that's going to be released next week. With Gabriella Hoffman. So she's a social media strategist, as well as she lives in Washington, D.C. and talks about a lot of conservation issues. So, and she's only 29 years old, and I feel like she's been in conservation for 30 years. Just the way she talks.
Well, it's great. That's great. Because, it's that one small minority of people that's preaching preservation over conservation. And you should be learning how to use wildlife and use the land and how to sustain.
And like Phil said, respect it.
Exactly.
Have the respect for it.
Yep.
I think everybody is a hunter. We love wildlife.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
don't think I've not cried over a deer that I've shot.
Yeah.
And not ashamed of it. It's you're taking a life, and you have to understand that, and you just, if you have that respect, I'm not shooting that to waste that deer. I'm not shooting it just for the thrill of it. I'm shooting it, and it's an honor to hunt, especially a white-tailed deer up here. How hard is that?
Yes.
And when you can connect and do it, it's just, I don't know. When you do it,
yes,
what it is. It is thrilling, but it's just so, that moment is just, you're in the woods and there's nothing else that is better right there.
Yep, and that's based on conservation, based on the numbers, is the number of tags they issue, based on a healthy population.
Yeah.
So it's all science-based, but when we have an emotional reaction for people that don't understand, like you said, you have an emotional reaction when you do it, they have an emotional reaction that you're doing it.
Yeah.
And, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. And, now you're taking your beliefs and putting it on me. And we're doing this to have a healthy population. And if we had too many deer,
maintain the population.
Yeah. And some of the spots in the country have too many deer, and then they bring in a hired gun to kill a whole bunch of deer. Right. And they're okay with that.
And they just look, I'm not sure if it was your podcast, Wayne, where they were talking about the lions out in Africa.
Yes. And that was on Jack Hart's. We talked about,
yeah. And they said that now it's outlawed. You can't kill lions. And what's happening? They're going into villages, and they're killing people. They're killing the kids.
And now they're poisoning water sources to kill lions, and now it's indiscriminate. Now you're not just killing the males or the older ones, you're killing everything.
And now the lions are dead on the side of the river.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like you said, the emotional legislation when it comes to these things, all because one guy came over and killed the big lion. I can't remember his name right now.
Cecil.
Yeah.
But he killed him legally.
Legally, yes.
And his guide told him to kill him.
Yeah.
So, I'd sometime on my podcast or the Thin Green Line, we certainly want to delve into that. I'd like to get somebody from Africa to talk on that subject too, that actually knows what was going on, because, again, something legally harvest. Every time you give an animal a name, though, it's not a good thing. So, and the guide should have known that. I remember here in Berlin, remember the piebald deer that got shot? Everybody was seeing him, and it became everybody.
I feel like I remember.
It wasn't that long ago.
There was an albino.
That was yeah. And it was shot legally with a bow, all set, but it was in a spot where everybody in Berlin was seeing him, and the phone rang off the hook. The first call I got, I sent 2 officers over to make sure everything was good, because the phone just kept ringing. And it was because the interaction with people are seeing it. And I get it. You like seeing it. You like seeing the wildlife. And I think as hunters, hey, that's a stupid thing to do. Don't shoot the piebald deer, even if it is legal.
I had thought about that too. Like, would I take that shot? And, I don't know until I'm in that moment. I'd like to think no, because that is so cool to just be able to see. And that's something that, especially when it is close to the population is going to see it. And maybe that's going to draw them closer into looking and trying to go out and see deer
and be part of the wildlife
in the woods. Exactly. You know what I mean? So I think it is important, like when you have a named animal or something, you have to kind of preserve that. And use
and that's, the guide should have known.
Yeah.
That's Cecil the lion. You know what that guy knew? He's like, I probably wanted to get this done and get it over with quick. And yeah, shoot Cecil. Because the problems I find with guides is usually money.
I was going to say, he's looking for a good tip.
He's looking for something quick, something easy. On to the next one.
Yeah.
Because he's got another guy to guide tomorrow or something. So yeah, shoot Cecil. Let's get this over with. Get a big tip and move on. Not that, hey, you shoot Cecil and the cause and effect of it, is look at the cause and effect of it. It's
right.
It was just an outcry over a named lion, which again was shot legally. So, and has had repercussions in Africa now with too many lions poisoning water sources, lions coming in. So just that's the reaction. I mean, we could go on with the incidents. The small incidents has just gone huge, and the huge incidents that have probably not taken any notice because they didn't have a name to them.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And it goes all the way back to even we talk about George Floyd and stuff like that. The small things, never get talked about, and then that one big incident just.
Yeah, but if we use the science and it's all science based, I think. Hopefully the politicians can understand science, but they get elected.
Yeah.
So if there's a whole bunch of people emotional, they listen to it because they're supposed to. But that's why it was such a good thing when fish and game departments were established. Most of them have rule-making authority. So they make rules outside the legislator to manage wildlife populations. Mm-hmm. A lot of these nonprofits, or I don't even want to call them nonprofits, animal rights, are going around that now to legislators. So they're trying to make a law rather than a rule, and we all know that laws supersede rules. Mm-hmm. So that's now the venue that they're taking is to make laws, to go around these agencies that are designed to manage wildlife. Mm-hmm. So,
well, it seems like you've had a lot of good things to say, Wayne, and I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast.
I've had a lot of things to say.
Oh, yeah. No, it's in a good way. And I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast. If anyone wants to support you, how can they do so?
Find me on social media, wardenswatch.com, Wardens Watch, Instagram, Wardens Watch, Facebook. Yeah. Subscribe to my podcast. I always get people to subscribe. Mm-hmm. That means go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, everywhere you can listen. Yeah. So it's that's just a good way to support. Listen to the stories of the men and women of conservation law enforcement is pretty cool. And then the Thin Green Line, we branch out and we do a lot of different things with that, and it's been a lot of fun and a lot of excitement. As you know, it's fun, and hopefully I think I'm making a difference. Some of the emails I get, some of the messages I get via Facebook, inspiring game wardens, people to become game wardens, and things like that. So it's been very rewarding.
Has it been it's been a good experience on social media so far?
Yeah, so far it's been good. You always get those animal rights people that weigh in and don't like the science-based conservation. Mm-hmm. So, but that's the people that I don't want to listen. Yeah. So if you're into science-based stuff and conservation versus preservation, please listen to Wardens Watch, because that's what game wardens do. Sometimes we have to kill animals we don't like it. Yeah. The older I get, the less I liked it. Mm-hmm. I saved a crow one time, and I couldn't kill this crow because I was in Colombia. He had burrowed out of himself a spot in the snowbanking, and he's just a crow with a broken wing. Yeah. But I tried to catch him once and I couldn't. He was still, so I gave him a couple days because he wasn't eating. He was living inside the snowbank, and then finally I caught him. And, let's face it, a crow probably should have been euthanized with a broken wing, but we had this relationship of me trying to catch him and I couldn't catch him. And so I brought him down to Kathy Gregg at the Elaine Center for Wildlife, and I told her the story. And she laughed because, to be honest with you, the people don't like, when it's an animal that sometimes everybody brings all these animals to the rehabilitators that can't be rehabilitated. So they like to see quality animals, and a crow's probably not on the quality animal list, but here's my story. And she laughed, and she splinted that thing, got him flying again, and released him. She named him Survivor for me. He lived about probably a week or two in that snowbank, and he'd hollow out a spot in the snowbank and then live in the snowbank. And then the day I tried to catch him, I just couldn't. He'd get up in the snow and he could hop along, and So that was pretty funny. The game warden chasing this crow as he's hopping along in the snow. It was about 3 or 4 feet, so he just couldn't. But I just waited him out until he just didn't. He wasn't eating, so he just didn't have any more energy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my survivor story.
Phil, do you have anything for Wayne right now? Any questions?
No, I mean I've known you for a long time, Wayne.
Well, I've known you for a very long time.
So yeah.
I hired Phil to help me clean up my when we cut that whole view out. So that was 18 years ago,
at least.
Yeah. So I've known
mean,
Phil for a very long time.
Long time ago. I was thinking about that when you were talking about dates. I'm like, when did I actually meet him? I think my first memory of you was shooting with my dad in a sand pit somewhere. I think we went skeet shooting.
Yeah, we went skeet shooting, yeah.
And I don't remember that year. I wonder if he does. I don't know if he was a trooper yet. I want to say no, because that was a long time ago.
It was a very long time ago. Yeah, that was fun.
This was actually awesome because I didn't know about the New York, schooling and park ranger jobs and stuff like that. So this has actually been great. Probably got more to talk to you about now than before. Beyond just normal catch up
things.
Yeah.
No, that's great. So.
I really appreciate you coming here, Wayne. It means a lot to me, and
Well, I think you're doing a good thing, John. The Point Man, I like it. I like your art, like I told you.
Yeah, thank you.
I like the idea of what you want to do. You want to connect and have people understand a little more, and I think that's a good thing for people to do. Understand what police officers go through, what they do, what the military goes through, what they do. Like I said today, we honor our military, but we're going to spit on our police officers. It just doesn't make sense to me as a citizen.
Honor both.
So, and I think it's going to turn around too. I always say, and this is probably politically incorrect, the best thing they can do is take a police department out of a city and see what happens.
Yeah,
see
exactly.
if the utopia they think is going to arrive. I think we saw that happen in Seattle when they just had a couple blocks that they took out the police and had a police free zone. What actually happened, and that could happen nationwide. And I don't think 95% of the Americans don't want that to happen.
Well, if they keep making war with the police, then the police aren't going to be there, and then what's going to happen from then on?
Yeah, Yeah, even now, who really wants to engage those hard things?
Exactly. When I took the test to become a cop, I finished 16th out of, I think it was about 160 people that had taken the test, and they went through 15 other people before they hired me, and now we can't even get 5 to show up for an exam. Nobody wants to be a cop anymore, and that's the bad thing about it, because you got to be able to pass this on eventually to always training the next generation and the next people. And it's like, obviously, being a sergeant to lieutenant, you're always training the person that's going to be taking your spot. Place. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and what people they're seeing this, they don't understand that the cartels are involved, the gangs are involved. They're the guys that were stacking flat screen TVs from Walmart weren't your normal runaround guys. It was all gangs, cartels. Ed Calderon, we had on the Thin Green Line, a former Mexican police officer for 10 years. Just the cartels are here.
Mm-hmm.
The cartels are here. They're organizing. It's the new organized crime,
and they're in every state.
Mm-hmm.
In every state.
So those are the things that connect, understand,
Yep.
Look beyond, and podcasts are helping to doing that nationwide. Definitely. Small, big, and large. So thank you very much for having me on. It was an honor.
Thank you, Wayne. I appreciate it. And if you guys like the podcast, you can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Google Play, and like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you'd like. We really don't care what you have to say. We'll hear it all. Right, Phil?
Yeah, always look.
Exactly. Rate it 0 if you want. Rate it a 5 if you want. Go on Instagram. You can find us there at Pointman Podcast. Do you have any final closing words or thoughts there, Philip?
Boy, not me today. No, I got nothing.
All right, man.
I got no extra.
I appreciate it. Well, for Phil, I'm John. Thanks for listening.